Actually, Hunter, can you do that one more time for me?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
I think I can remember the script. I'd like to start the work session for the Frisco Town Council. And if I could have the roll call, please.
Absolutely. Incan, absent. Burley. Here. Aronson, absent. Held.
Here.
Halenko.
Here.
Scripsack, Adrian.
Here.
Mortensen.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. First up on the work session agenda this afternoon is the Camp Hale Continental Divide National Monument Impacts on Our Backyard Plan. Up there. Section 2, who am I turning over to? Susan, Adam, both? Right over, Adam, you're jumping right in.
Right in. He had offered to come.
Absolutely.
Give us an update, so.
Appreciate that. Welcome. And
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Adam Bianchi. I'm the district ranger here for the Dillon Ranger District. You all know, we've been working hard on the Frisco backyard, and that's where sort of this conversation came up today. Diane, Susan, and Pete and Forest Service folks had a conversation last week or the week before of kind of how do we move forward with the given new national monument. I was just kind of shared information of what I knew to date. And as I kind of talk and explain, you'll kind of hear there's probably more questions and I've got answers. But I think that the good thing is we have the full intention to continue to move forward on Frisco Backyard Project, just as we did prior to the monument designation. But I'll kind of give you a quick history of how we got here. Probably over 2 months ago, we really started hearing the rumblings more and more about the potential of the 10-mile range becoming part of the national monument. The Secretary of Agriculture came along with Governor, Senator Bennett, Polis, and Hickenlooper, and we really then started to pick up traction. We started to get a lot of requests and asks of us to provide information about the 10-mile range. All this stems from the original Core Act for many of you that have been involved with that. And so we were working off the premise for much of the time that the boundaries from the Core Act would kind of remain as the boundary for the national monument. But what we didn't know is what stipulations would be in the monument that would affect how we currently manage today. But through a lot of input that we were giving to the White House and the Secretary's office, the proclamation came out, I feel, really, really beneficial to the way we currently manage the national forest in the 10-mile range. There isn't a lot of additional restrictions. It really speaks to through the Antiquities Act. It really speaks to protecting the objects, and by the objects, it's referring to a lot of the prehistoric objects, from the Native American objects to mining objects, and some ecological objects as well. When we get into high alpine protection of certain fish species, plants, those sort of things. And through there's exceptions that are within the proclamation that talks to our current management. And what it does outline is that we are responsible to come up with a new management plan for the area. It doesn't give us a timeline of when or how quickly we need to do that, but it says that we will work through a new management plan and a new travel management plan. So that's what we're currently trying to work through. But in the meantime, the guidance is that we will manage it how the proclamation lays out. That proclamation lays out for continued use of recreation, motorized, non-motorized, mechanized use, so mountain biking to the current motorized use without the 10-mile on Jeep trails, to you name it. So we'll continue to manage as we have. Very similarly, on the vegetation management side, the restriction refers to commercial timber harvesting. When referring to that, it's talking about when the primary premise of cutting the trees is strictly for selling the timber. That's something that needs a special through the secretary approval process to do that. But for other ecological benefits, fuels reduction, things of that nature, we're totally allowed to keep moving forward. So So where does this leave a little bit in the backyard? I fully intend to just continue moving with the backyard proposal and project. I think prior to the monument, we probably were going to receive a good amount of interest locally about the project, maybe a little regionally. I think the difference may be now that it's the nation's newest monument, and it'll bring just a broader audience attention to the project proposal. And so we may just see a little more work that we have to work through on public comments, probably a broader scope of comments and people that are responding to the project. That is one piece we'll have to work through, and but that's what the National Environmental Policy Act is for. It's national forest, and people from the nation, have a right to determine how their land is managed. So it's just another piece of it, but I don't anticipate it really changing too much, and we'll continue moving forward with the backyard project. As far as the management plan moving forward on the monument, that's really where the meat and potatoes comes in, and your all involvement comes in. There'll be a lot of stakeholder engagement, public engagement on that plan. The plan really is where it gets the nuts and bolts of how we manage. It all will tie back to the proclamation, but it really gets into which trails, are mountain biking versus just hiking, for instance. It really ties stuff back, and that's a huge public process. So there's a lot of opportunity then for the public and stakeholders to get involved into the future of the management of the monument. So anyway, I can take questions, but I don't have a whole lot there at this point because it's so new, but I don't see anything that'll hang us up from our current conversations and proposal around the Frisco backyard project.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Go for it.
Hi, my apologies. So with this broader audience and broader designation, it's going to bring more people in theory. We're already the most visited national forest in the nation. What does that look like from a trailhead and an infrastructure perspective? Frisco really, we are now bounded by wilderness and the monument and national forest. Like, what does that mean for dealing with the increased visitation from a management perspective? I mean, the resources are one thing, but the actual getting people to those resources.
Great question. So I think that through the management plan will help us to work through some of those things of, are there new parking areas that need to be developed? I don't necessarily anticipate a fee or anything like that, but who knows? That's for the public to tell us what they think. The monument doesn't come with a new line item, a new budget line item for us to be able to manage the monument now. It's not any different from that perspective. So we still need the help and the support of great partners such as the town of Frisco to help us manage into the future. And so what I really look at it as is we've been talking through the Frisco backyard about how the town of Frisco can help us continue to maintain those trailheads, create opportunities for garbage disposal, other things. We're going to probably lean into that conversation even more. What it may do is provide us an opportunity to go after additional dollars and funding because of that designation. It doesn't come with a new line item, but we can definitely makes it easier for us to raise our hand and get that additional funding. And what I see with that is not only just directly what's happening right here in your backyard, but that whole 10-mile range, all the way from Quandary, all the way up, by different opportunities to get people to the range. We know that people are going to want to visit, and how do we, create the parking? Is it shuttles? Do we create new shuttle systems and bus options? And those are those things we've been having conversations with even before this monument. And so I envision that'll continue, and that's part of our vision and plan anyway. This has been a problem even before the monument, so it's not new. We've already kind of been working through a lot of that, and I anticipate we'll just we'll continue to have those conversations, and probably with a different mindset. The Frisco backyard conversation, we never really had additional parking that we built in there, but the other day it's like, well, maybe we need to take a harder look there, right? So it will definitely make us look at things differently.
Does it speed up the timeline of anything?
Yeah, great question. No, that's what I was sort of alluding to, where I wouldn't necessarily say slow down, but what it'll may do is that it's going to bring additional attention to the project, because right now we've got somewhere around 1,200 acres of fuels reduction work within there. We know the importance of fuels reduction work and wildfire prevention, but somebody living in Michigan or something may not, right? And so we may receive a lot of additional comments about that type of work, and maybe they don't support that type of work. And so we'll just have to work through that process. That's what I mean by a broader scope of people and interests that we'll have to work through.
Do you see any potential with the kind of additional focus, for lack of a better word, on this monument now, that the management plan, that there would be any direction that you would all receive from higher ups in your department of expanding the scope of that, and that might kind of, to Jesse's comment, slow that down? Or do you think right now too much on the plate for you all to kind of wrap your heads around, and this one's already in the works a little bit, going to keep moving forward as scoped?
So we had a lot of conversations at the time before the actual proclamation with the White House and the Secretary's office about the project. They took a pretty good deep dive into past projects, what we're currently implementing, and what our future projects are. And so they took a deep dive into that. We've had a lot of conversations around the backyard with them. So they fully knew and understood when we, before the president signed the proclamation and became a monument, that this was really important to the town. I think having the support of you all and the importance of doing this work, not only from the fuels reduction work, but the recreational benefits that will provide now to the monument. I mean, they could see that benefit, right? And so there wasn't any pushback. They just wanted to know what we were planning. And so I don't anticipate it changing. It's, I honestly think that a lot of that, some of that language was put into the monument proclamation strictly because of where we were at with, on the fuels reduction work and continuing to provide recreational opportunities. That language wasn't a mistake. That was due to a lot of the projects in the backyard, a lot of the stuff we've got going forward, and the support that you guys demonstrated that you want to see, in your community.
Thank you. Like questions?
I have one other, more curiosity. I'm looking at the map here and, I-70. So now we've got, again, wilderness and this monument and I-70 going right through it. And I know that wildlife is not your jurisdiction, but I'm just curious, there's been a lot of like wildlife crossings and other projects that have been identified really over the Vail Pass area. Now that we have sort of a quasi contiguous, I know they're different designations, but in theory, they're protected. Does that lend any additional help to those kinds of projects along the I-70 corridor?
Not through the proclamation, but I would say very similarly, I just think that the new monument's going to bring additional level of attention to it, and we can raise our hand and say we've got this awesome national monument that we've got a lot of work that we'd like to continue to do. Everything from interpretation signs to trailhead, like there's a plethora of stuff we need to do to get it to a monument that people expect when they come to visit. And so, there's a lot of opportunity to also increase, like you said, wildlife crossings and other things. All of the crossings, the Forest Service has been heavily involved with Summit County safe passages and things. And so all the crossings that have been identified are not within, where it would have an issue with the wilderness, the wilderness and the monument where it sits. So I don't anticipate it having a challenge there. There is a lot of language that talks about existing right-of-ways from travel corridors and things. And so there is that opportunity too, if we had to cross it, that we'd probably be able to maybe work through that just on what right of ways that CDOT has and things of that nature.
Cool. Thanks.
Anything else, everybody?
Yeah, I'd just say thank you, Adam. I mean, it's unbelievable. I gotta tell you, and I had no idea until I reviewed this packet the extent of where the monument went, and it fully encompasses the backyard. It almost blows my mind that it's all of a sudden come to this. And, so now we'll have the focus, we'll have federal focus, we're gonna be able to get whatever it is we want or need, I believe, as long within reason. We should, through the process of figuring out what this plan is, be sure to have our ducks in a row, and whatever we think our asks should be they, let's work with CDOT and get, wildlife crossings or whatever. Let's shoot for the sky for this kind of stuff. I mean, this is big time. It is a little scary to imagine now the amount of people that are just going to come here because it's a national monument, and how many people are going to park at Zach Stop just because of that, right? So definitely,
I have a driveway.
you have a driveway. We have,
I'm gonna start charging.
yeah, we have constant and current parking issue, and this I think would only help, to develop those things. I know some people aren't necessarily behind the idea of putting money into these parking areas. But we've identified these areas as an issue already. And this is going to give us, I believe, the resources in order to really be able to do it right. So thanks. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah.
like I said, there's a lot of work ahead of us with this management plan, and that will get to the, kind of the meat and potatoes of what we envision. When I mean the greater community that, what everyone envisions this monument to be, and that's going to be the direction. And then we follow on how to manage it moving forward. And then through that will be the opportunity to say and raise our hand when we've got projects and different things we'd like to see done in the monument.
Yeah, that's great.
And I totally agree. And I think that's partially that makes that transportation discussion we're gonna have in a little bit, like all the more relevant is if we do it right and look towards the future, we need to make sure that we're thinking about what this designation implies and how we can best start planning now. So it's all lining up.
Yeah.
And Adam, I appreciate just your reading it and everything you've done. And I know I worked with the Senator Bennett staff a lot when this started getting discussed to make sure that the backyard plan was very upfront in their conversations. And I think probably like you never thought you'd be in here talking to the White House and everything else. And
Right.
I felt the
Right,
same way.
absolutely.
Like, it is encouraging to just hear you reiterate like that might get a little more input and a little more focus, but we're moving forward, and I
Absolutely.
really appreciate you hearing
Yeah.
that. So thank you.
Will there be an advisory committee related to the management plan effort?
It's a great question. We're just starting to wrap around. I think the short answer is there'll be probably something, an advisory committee, a stakeholder committee we're going to have to pull together to help us start framing it. What that looks like and timelines, I don't have an answer for that. But that would be probably the easiest way to really start engaging is pulling, a lot of folks in. And it's going to be a challenge because it's just not the 10 miles, that the whole Camp Hale piece, which means a lot to a lot of folks, especially a lot of stakeholders in Eagle County. So how to best do that? I don't think we've wrapped our head around it. But to your point, we're definitely going to need to bring in stakeholders and have a group of folks really helping us guide that management process.
I guess I'd have one, I don't even know if it's a question, but just on the side of like search and rescue incidents and stuff like that, do you, I don't know, maybe you don't know, but anticipate anything in there to change, or how would we, I guess that could be a part of that advisory committee conversation, but I'm just curious if like, just how those things would go and how search and rescue might, I don't know, would it change for them? What resources would they need if there's more folks doing stuff?
Increased.
I don't know. I like live in the Pequot neighborhood, and you just see the rescues off of Mount Royal like every year. And I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I don't have a set. I mean, anecdotally, we could probably think that more people brings more opportunities for search and rescue. I think that's a great conversation back to kind of bringing in the stakeholders and the sheriff's department and search and rescue on what things need to happen differently in order to make sure that we're providing that service is still being provided. I think that we've been able to demonstrate, for instance, Quandary, that was a lot of that was driven through the issues associated with parking along with Paula Gulch Road that we couldn't get search and rescue vehicles up there, right? And so there's been a good demonstration that search and rescue is definitely a priority. And so I would anticipate that we'd have a lot of very similar conversations around how search and rescue is being able to access and available parking, a lot of the things that may cause an issue for us. I don't have a clear answer of exactly how, numbers and things, but I think you're probably right. Anecdotally, we'll probably see a spike. A lot of people that will want to visit the monument and not have maybe a good background of how to do it safely.
I've got a better chance of getting my Via Ferrata across the face of Mount Royal with the Association of Camp Hale now, or I'll keep that one in future plans. Excellent. Well, I think that we appreciate your time, Adam. Thanks for being here and all you do. And
I'd be happy to, as I learn more, we'll be talking and glad to give updates. But yeah, so thank you.
much. Yep. Have a good evening.
And just one thing with that, Pete, if you, let's stay in touch as far as how we figure out what trails are allowed for what, and, does that change your whole plan, right? From the federal government.
So to that point, Andy, Hunter, I have a question if you guys don't mind.
All right, Rick. Yeah, go ahead.
Am I really loud?
No, just startling that you joined us, and I know you warned me you were joining us, but I forgot.
So just to the point, Andy, I think this is it's right on point with what you're asking. Is just thinking way forward into the future. This is all brand new for all of us, but does this change in designation affect the availability of parts of the Frisco backyard being included within the town of Frisco special use permit within a national forest?
Right.
Yeah, another good question. I don't anticipate it. So existing permits are not affected. Now, new permits, there's nothing that I'm aware of within the proclamation that limits new permits. And so I don't look, I said it before, this doesn't come with any dollars associated with it. And so I'm really hopeful that we'll continue on this partnership, because I'm going to be looking to you all to continue to help support in that. And a big part of the backyard in our conversations have been about helping us maintain the new trail infrastructure into the future. And that's my intent. Now we'll see how things kind of continue to shake out, but I don't anticipate that changing. My hope is that we continue to do that as we planned and talked through.
Super. Thank you. That's great to hear.
Thanks, Rick. Next up this afternoon, agenda item number 2, and this is the Granite Park finance discussion. Leslie's here, and she brought some friends.
Pass out our pro forma housing. Potential.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for joining us for a discussion about the financing of Granite Park housing project that, as you know, we've been working on for quite some time in conjunction with CDOT. So we have here with us this evening, Dee Weiser. He is with Butler Snow. In January of this year, we hired him along with his firm to serve as our bond counsel. Bond counsel is interesting because while we have retained the firm, he represents the interests of the shareholders. And he also is able to provide a legal opinion about whether the town is authorized to issue the proposed securities. and that we've met the legal requirements. Additionally, I should mention that he has quite a bit of experience in mountain communities. He lives in a mountain community, and he also has worked on several housing projects similar to Granite Park. Also with us this evening, we have Todd Snow from Stifel. And he has his firm has worked with the town previously with the marina borrowing. And he also has lots of experience with housing specific projects. And there's a list on here of some similar communities to the town of Frisco that he has worked with previously. So I'm going to have them come up, starting with Dee, to discuss what certificates of participation, or you can stay seated right there. Discuss certificates of participation and his role in the process.
Great, thank you. It's good to be with you this evening. One minor correction. We are your lawyer. We give an opinion to the investors that they rely upon, but we represent Frisco in this process. And certificates of participation are the name used in the marketplace for securities that are going to be sold by Todd and his firm to investors. But the certificates are payable from rentals paid by the town pursuant to a lease purchase agreement between the town and a trustee acting on behalf of the investors. And the important part of that lease purchase agreement for Colorado law purposes is that it is subject, the payment of the rentals is subject to annual renewal or annual appropriation by you as the governing body of the town. So every year you have the right to walk away if you wish. Now, no one, including the investors, expect that to be the case. And it's been the rare circumstance, in extremely rare circumstance in Colorado where that's happened. In this case, most likely what will happen is there'll be a site lease, a ground lease from the town and maybe acting in concert with CDOT to the trustee, and then the trustee will lease the property back to you for construction of the project. As Leslie said, we've worked on a number of these transactions, particularly in mountain communities, 2 in Breck, and we're working on a 3rd one right now that Stifel is underwriting. Colorado Mountain College, with Stifel underwrote. Eagle County School, which Stifel underwrote. There's probably a theme here. Vail, the main residences at Vail. And so a lot of communities are tackling this problem and using certificates of participation as the tool to do so. Here's the graphic describing what I just said. Should have gone to that slide first, but you can see what I said outlined there. Todd's firm prepared this for us, but it describes the documents that are necessary. If you decide to go forward, it's probably minimally 90 days from when you pull the trigger to closing, maybe a little longer than that in reality, because we have year end here and the holidays and so forth. You will approve this by ordinance, which would mean your normal 2-reading process to get to closing, unless you decided to do it as an emergency, but we don't need to plan for that at this stage.
And 2 of those projects that Dee described were actually included as case studies in the packet. We'll let Todd describe the financing aspect of the COPs.
Great, thank you. And, I think Dee is spot on that this is a very commonplace way to finance these types of projects. So in addition to schools, I've done these projects in Aspen for their fire district. You can't run into a community anymore where it's no longer an issue that needs to be addressed. So this is a very expeditious way to do this. You're still borrowing with tax exempt funds. So even though we've seen interest rates increase quite a bit here since January, you're still looking at fairly attractive rates. Statute, I believe, allows you to go out 40 years if you wanted. And much like in selecting a mortgage, the longer the term you choose, the lower the annual payment.
Got some mic issues in here right now. So
okay, we'll try that again. So again, the more commonplace terms would be 20 years or 30 years. And there is kind of a potential impact if you choose the 30-year financing, where it's going to lower your annual payments and see if I can get something out where the numbers are still legible to my eyes. Yeah, in the case of a 20-year amortization or a term, your annual payment would be in the $477,000 a year range. And that's with current interest rates. That's based on about 4.6% all-in rate. And the other option would be to go longer. Both of, the 20 or 30-year term would both give you the option for prepayment after 10 years had expired, or you had additional funds you could take this out with. So that would be something that would kind of make them very similar. Because right now there is such uncertainty about where interest rates are headed, we're seeing less investors willing to go out 30 years. So you actually might pay a bit of a premium for that longer term. But again, I think in a few years, we're going to have a better sense if we're absolutely at the peak right now, you can refinance these things. So I wouldn't get too caught up. I think still long term, on the 30-year financing, you're about 5%, 4.96 in the current market. So that's a difference of about almost 0.4% between the 20 and 30 year. But you are dropping your annual payment on the 30-year term from $477,000 a year down to just below $400,000. So again, that's kind of something you have to feel comfortable with. Obviously, it's going to determine where you're going to need to set the rates of those units to produce those revenues. And so another consideration. And again, these are very widely accepted in the marketplace. You'll have a good underlying credit rating. And again, that's something we'd want to do is make sure that once we start this process, that as we're preparing the documents, we go out to Moody's or Standard & Poor's, who'd be the rating agencies, and really explain your story. As Dee said, they're seeing this right now on a deal we're doing at Breckenridge. And so I think they really understand that this is something that they're going to see more and more of. And so you will benefit from having a very high credit rating on this financing.
One thing that you said that I probably should have observed is you're not pledging the revenues from the project. You can use any of your legally available monies to make the rental payments. And in fact, investors rather expect you would if you needed to. Obviously, you'll want to size the rentals to try and cover your cost, but that's not what the investors are going to care about.
Good, next slide.
Sure. And really, I think that, we just wanted to kind of give you a sense that even though rates have run up, we've run up from an extremely low, all-time low. Both taxes and taxable rates got down to kind of unbelievable levels during the pandemic when people had no sense of where anything was going. And so we've come up from that probably 3% since that period of time. But again, we're really not that much higher than we were prior to the pandemic. So long term, I still think that the rates are very advantageous to do this. So again, I can't really tell you where rates are going to go. I've been telling my clients for the last 8 years, hey, rates are going to go up. And by God, I was right after 8 years. I think that the pundits out there are thinking that at some point we are going to see a recession kick in much stronger than it currently is. And typically you do have that flight to quality where people start to say, well, bond rates aren't so bad. It's more certain than where stocks are. And so we think that, that the pundits think that rates will probably decrease over next year during the point where we'll start to really see recession. But again, I'm just not an advocate that local government should be gamblers. I would take the rates that are available to you at the time, lock them in. And then again, if we're wrong, you can refinance them. And if they continue up to 8%, you're going to be happy you got sub 5% money. Where we are, this is kind of the long-term rate. You can see that the right edge of that screen shows what's happened since January. It's been straight up. I'm a believer based upon my long-term interaction with the markets that nothing ever goes straight up without pause. And so I do believe we'll see some sort of a correction to that trend. But again, if you can see my kids' college fund performance during the 08-09 period, I'm not the smartest guy and telling you where rates are going to go. So you can take the data and interpret as you will.
So now for the Frisco perspective, specific to the Granite Park project, we do not yet have a guaranteed maximum price, but I believe we expect to have that around the end of January, beginning of February. And we will come back to council with that information. However, the pro forma currently does estimate about $12 million in construction. That's hard costs and soft costs together. It also contemplates the $1.5 million DOLA grant that we've already been awarded and the 50% cost share with CDOT. And then the current market conditions, what Todd cited, we have at the rate of 4.6%. And that will save us about $2.4 million over the life of the loan if we went with a shorter term. And then just to put in perspective, the net operating income from the project for the 11 Frisco units, we expect that to net about $165,000 a year. So not quite enough to pay for the debt service that's expected. Additionally, on the overall picture of the 10-year housing forecast that's in front of you, which hopefully does allow it for you to make some decisions, we've added in the number of deed restricted units at the top. This might be a slightly more conservative comparison as compared to the numbers that Danelle has provided previously, but it does show some numbers over the years, including with our assumptions that we've made about some additional projects that are contemplated in here. I just want to confirm with council that what we've heard from you is that you wish to move aggressively, that this is the #1 challenge in our community right now, that we can leverage these STR tax funds that were recently approved by voters by applying those now, as opposed to waiting for reserves to build up in order to complete projects. And additionally, it allows us some flexibility to purchase some additional property in the meantime. And the Galena housing project is included in here. It currently contemplates not having a partner. Of course, that could always change in the future. It includes $1 million in grant funding. I would hope that we might be able to receive more than $1 million in grant funding, but that's all that is included right now as a conservative approach. And it includes the same financing term as what the Granite project contemplates. Of course, as Todd said, we don't know what those numbers will actually be, but that's the assumption that's currently included in the pro forma. Additionally, regarding future decision of sale of assets, this is always up to council, but what's currently included is the sale of 220 Galena, which was recently purchased in 2023. It includes selling that property. It does not include selling any other properties though. So you will see, going out in future years and say 2029, 2031, we have some negative numbers at the bottom for spendable fund balance. However, these are things that can be adjusted. This is a fluid document. We could make a decision in the future if you wish to sell some of those Mary Ruth 10 Mile Basin properties, or any of other properties that we currently hold in the portfolio. We have that flexibility to do so and to reassess in any future budgets. But we've tried to include, some thoughts about future projects in here. We have, for example, 810 Pitkin Alley. This pro forma contemplates 10 for sale units on that property at a subsidy of $250,000 per unit, which is what we've been hearing is about the going rate that a town needs to subsidize some for sale units. Perhaps those could be at 100% AMI. If Proposition 123 passes tonight, maybe we could receive some funding if we kept that at the 100% AMI, but obviously a lot of flexibility on any of these other projects that are contemplated. And it also includes a property A in here with a property purchase of $3 million potentially in 2023. And it includes building 8 for sale units at the same subsidy of $250,000. It also contemplates a separate property B purchase. For this property, it contemplates perhaps we could entice a private developer to build a mixed use development there. And perhaps if you allow 160% AMI units, a private developer could be interested in doing that simply for a subsidy of the land and not additional funds out of the town's pocket. It also contemplates in 2029 and 2031 some completely unknown projects, showing a subsidy of $1 million per project and perhaps a $600,000 annual debt payment on one, and perhaps a $800,000 debt payment on another one. So completely hypothetical. Also, just to point out regarding Lake Hill, while there is a line on the pro forma, it does not currently include any partner contributions from the town of Frisco, but it's included on there because we just want to let you know we didn't overlook it. So as far as the town council discussion, staff, Todd and Dee are here for questions, but we are looking for an answer as far as if you do authorize the financing of the Granite Park project, and if so, in what amount. If that is something that you approve, then the next step would be for us to come back to you with an ordinance that would set some maximums, such as the lease term, the maximum annual payment, maximum total repayment, maximum principal amount, maximum effective interest rate. And it would also authorize myself to prepare an official statement and for the mayor to approve that, which starts off with a preliminary official statement. It's presented as prepared, and then we would seek an approval.
Thank you all. Math. Yeah. I can.
There's also a graph.
So you can just look at it.
Graphs are math.
That's how I see math best. I'm not sure. I think it's kind of what you were getting at there, Leslie. And I'm not sure how to best frame this question, but with all of those projects, would it hinder us in the marketplace when we're trying to do more COPs in the future, anything else to have multiple, like every 2 years going in to try to get more COPs for future projects? Or is there a way to try to go more in now based on the properties we do own to then have more of those available funds to acquire more projects that or properties, I should say?
I don't think you're gonna get dinged for going back in successive years. I think that it's gonna be partly how much of the expenses is offset by the rental income. Depending on what sort of AMI test you choose. I think that, it's something you do have to remember that the ultimate backstop for these financings will be your general fund. So you have to kind of foresee what's going to happen there. You're going to have a slowdown in the economy if you do see an extended recession. I think part of it's how much of your cash you're going to put in each of these deals. Because again, as you start to spend on your reserves, that is something that can have a credit implication. But I don't foresee having multiple COPs, to accomplish these projects impacting your ability to borrow in the future.
And I think what I'd add to that is federal tax law. Again, I assume you're going to want to have this be tax exempt interest. Federal tax law says that when you issue any tax exempt obligation, you have to have a reasonable expectation you're going to spend 85% of the proceeds within 3 years. So that provides a bit of a parameter about how far out you could go. Plus, you probably don't want to incur interest costs too soon, right? But on the other hand, BREC has 3 COPs outstanding for various purposes and about to do a 4th one. So they haven't seen a credit negative in doing that.
So what this pro forma currently contemplates is doing a financing on Granite, doing a separate financing on Galena, and contributing some cash to both of those because you don't want to over borrow. So it's hard to get that exactly right. So we will need to contribute some cash to those projects.
Questions, concerns, thoughts?
I had a question around how we make payments. So the comment was made that we look at setting the rental rates. I'm assuming per unit, right? I mean, is that what you're talking about? And then if we don't make enough on that, then we backstop it with other funds from somewhere else. How does that play into the affordability? I mean, I would hate to set the rents just so we pay our debt service and not actually keep an eye on the affordability piece, but has that already been contemplated in the amount we're borrowing, or we're not there yet? Or
so as far as the rental rates, for the Granite project, that was part of the agreement with CDOT to set them at lower AMIs. So when I provided the number about what we think the net operating income on that property is going to be around $160,000 a year, that's based upon those lower AMIs. So we're not aiming to try to recapture the amount of the debt service with the rentals. We know in this market that that's just not something that we can do.
Because the investors are not looking to the rental stream, they're looking more to your general revenues. That gives you all the flexibility to adjust rates to the rental rates to wherever you want them to be.
And as far as the numbers that are included in here for Galena, they are also included in here for that 80 to 120% AMI range. We've been hearing from DOLA that, if we're hopeful for grant funding from that, I mean, that is the range that we're going to need to stay in. So as far as the income that's coming into the project, this included in the pro forma, it's those lower AMIs.
And I guess you might have sort of answered this already, but we would be borrowing the money, so CDOT. Like, how does CDOT play a role in this conversation?
I can say CDOT is not going to be participating in financing. They're just going to be cash funding from what they've told us so far.
Okay, so the financing piece is just our half of this project? Even, okay.
Yes. Except for Galena, we do not currently have a
Right.
partner, so that's financing the whole
Okay.
project.
Thank you.
How's everybody feeling about this? Need more info?
Hey, Hunter.
Hey, Rick, go ahead.
So we briefly touched on it the other night or the other afternoon. So is this overarching strategy to finance the construction of these two projects, which then leaves our cash available from 5A funding, short-term rental, and any other revenues we have coming into our housing fund, that leaves that funding available for purchase of future land acquisition? Is that how I am understanding this?
Yes, so it's harder for you to see because you don't have the 10-year pro forma in front of you. However, there was a version included in the packet. But this pro forma contemplates financing those two projects and then having the ability to purchase what's included in here is a property A, a property B, and then two other potential projects out in 2028 and 2030, as well as building on the Pick and Alley project. And, you know, like I said, if we sell some assets from our portfolio, it gives us even more flexibility to use those funds to purchase additional land in the future. So this would give us more flexibility to be more aggressive with the 5A funding, as well as the newly passed short-term rental tax.
Sure, I'm familiar with that document. I actually reviewed it with my accountant today. So that's what I'm speaking to is this the philosophy this council is willing to embrace at this time?
That is the ultimate question.
If you're ready to weigh in, Rick, you can start the conversation.
I think based on that the pro forma and the way everything shapes up, it doesn't put the town in overly leveraged, if you will, based on those numbers that I've seen within that document. So I would support going forward because what I don't want to miss at this point is an opportunity to purchase more land, because it's all cyclical and we're going to have more conversations about this tonight. But if we can't build or partner for housing if we don't have the land to start with. So I just don't want to lose that. And the model of the town bringing the land to the table and having someone else develop it is where I hope we end up. But if this is what we need to kickstart it, then I support it.
Thanks, Rick. And I'm right there with you. I think this is the right thing to do. Now's the time. We're seeing great properties still in the market, which is telling, I think. And if we can capitalize on that, that'd be great. A question I had, probably Thad would be the one who knows best on this one, but when does the base camp deal come due roughly, and how much? I won't hold you to the exact number. It's 2 years. Is it 20?
No, another year, so it starts up with the annual.
Another year or so, it starts into its annual payments. Don't hold me to this.
Yep.
300,000-ish range.
Yep, that's where I was thinking, but I couldn't.
Period of
10 years, and then there's a lump sum at the end of that, if I recall correctly.
I don't recall.
It's okay. It's all right.
No, it was
That's
not
pretty close.
question, but I think that's an important thing for me in thinking about this, is that we do have that in the near future. That's been a revenue stream that we haven't had, that makes me feel even more comfortable about going this direction, because it's a huge part of the community's property that was very contentious on how it went through, but now I think we're seeing the benefits of that deal coming through to help us solve this problem and acquire more property with those funds. And so I think that's where I feel really comfortable moving in this direction and going ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I basically had the same, well, it's weird sound. The same thing as Rick. I had also shared this with my accountant. Yeah. Well,
Stand on.
But and his feeling was that like you obviously don't want to tie up all your money and not be able to move forward on anything else. But I did not think about that at all. And having that base camp income, I think for me, it makes me feel more comfortable.
Yeah, this isn't my wheelhouse, but in every case this way, we want to finance this stuff. There's no reason to be spending our own money on it. Use the bank's money. As long as we can follow with interest rates and we can just refinance somewhere along the way, we're going to end up realizing a savings, hopefully, as long as they don't keep going up at this point. So I'm in favor. It also doesn't hold us back from other COPs in the future. If we move forward to keep it going.
Here, Liz, how you good?
I'm supportive. I wanted to just for my own edification, go back to the second slide that you showed. Because I didn't understand the ground lease to then turn around and be leased back to piece.
Yes.
Show us slide again.
Sorry.
I just, not my wheelhouse. Yes, this one. Can you explain this to me a little bit, maybe differently than you did the first time?
Challenge.
I think it is you and CDOT on the land. Is that?
We own it flat out.
You own it flat out. Okay, so you own the land. And so we need to get to the trustee some interest in that real estate so that should you ever not appropriate or otherwise default, they can do something with an investor with it. And so one way we could do it would be to sell the land. But another way we can do it is just to do a ground lease from the town to the trustee and then do the lease purchase agreement back. I know it sounds a little smoke and mirror-ish a little bit, but the easy way to think about it is as if you sold it, so you own the land, you sell it to the trustee and then lease it back. It's the same as that, except we do it pursuant to a ground lease.
Okay.
And the advantage of that is even if you default, someday it will come back to you at the end of the ground lease term. So to take Todd's number, if you were going to do a 20-year financing, the ground lease would have a 30-year term on it, subject to the fact it would terminate when the COPs are paid off.
Okay.
So
the
Thank you.
trustee
That
can
was my
step in and
second
find an
question.
alternate person to rent that facility and provide those revenues to make the payments on those COPs.
from an investor's perspective, this is in part a real estate deal, and they need to know that if you don't perform, they can do something with the real estate for a period of time.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. That's what that's up to council.
Yeah, one other thing, let's just be careful of selling our assets that we already have. Obviously, if the economy takes a dive and our sales tax does, then that's different. But I partially believe we're in a position that if the economy takes a dive, we're actually going to be fine just because of where we are in relation to Denver and
And a national monument.
a national monument in our backyard. Right. Yeah, thanks.
You good?
I feel pretty good. I like what Rick said a lot. And selling our current, like any current assets, like the Mary Ruth or whatever, like hopefully we don't end up there.
Sounds like we've got support to move forward with this and Appreciate all the information. Did what other, bring it up to, oh,
Sorry, related to timing, you said we could do this 90 days, 2 readings, da, 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 da. Do we do this after we get our maximum, not to exceed whatever cost?
So the idea would be now that if Thad confirms that that's the official authority to move forward, we would come back to you early next year once we have the guaranteed max price so that we could set all of those maximums in that ordinance. And the hope would be I think that the first quarter is a good time to close on a deal. So it would be preferred if we could move forward with that timing.
And is there a point at which we're able to lock in rates, or is it just subject to when we go to close at that point?
The rates get locked at pricing, so.
Pricing,
Yeah,
okay.
we don't really have any ability to do any hedges or anything like that, unlike a commercial bank. But again, it's something that we can certainly respond to. You're trying to keep Leslie apprised of what's happening in the market. I mean, there's a school of thought that Apple will see some stability in the market after the elections. But again, if rates start running, we're going to let you know, and then you can pull the trigger at that point, lock in the rates. I think we're going to probably go kind of sideways. We've run up so much here in the last couple of months. I think it's going to stabilize.
And we can go on a parallel path, start to prepare the documents, have it all ready to go. And then when you get the GMP, pull the trigger.
May I ask you two
absolutely.
very technical legal questions while I have Dee in the room? If I can.
There's
When did I'm just curious, when did the private activity rules change, or bond counsel such as yourself, what changed to help get bond opinions on these kind of deals that once would not have passed muster under private activity?
Well, actually, the good, unless I misunderstood the facts, the good thing here is there's no private business use. It is the town's project and CDOT's project. They are the users, if you will. They're gonna be leased to individuals, but those individuals aren't making use of it in a business sense. If you told me you're gonna enter into a master lease with Vail Resorts for more than 10% of these units, then that's going to create a problem. But as long as they're just going to individuals to live there, that's not a private activity bond problem.
Even if it's a for sale rather than a for rent.
Well, if it's for sale, that's a different question, but these are for rent. So for sale, we would have loan problems potentially and collateral problems, but
Assuming for purposes of discussion then that these for rent units were put under deed restrictions to make them so in perpetuity. Are those restrictions then subordinated to the ground lease interests of the trustee?
that's right. And almost all of the projects that I mentioned earlier have some element of restriction on it. Sometimes it's just employment, sometimes it's AMI in terms of income, sometimes it's AMI in terms of rent. But as a legal matter, in a project like this where there's not private business use involved, there's no limitation on what that could be, and there's no requirement that there be any limit. But of course, as a policy matter, you want that.
So if there was a default, the lender gets that property free of those restrictions. So additional motivation for the town to make its payments.
Right, got it. Thank you.
And what more do you need from us direction wise for staff to move forward? Or is that sufficient with this conversation? Till we go towards drafting the ordinance. We're good. All right.
All right, thank you all.
You will still have decision making on this and,
Oh, yeah.
and go or no go time.
Yeah, times two.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Always good to know.
Yep. Not locked in. Next, this afternoon's work session is the winter operations update, and I know Eric's here joining us, and Addison is online, and
Yes, I am mayor and town council. How is everybody doing tonight?
excellent. Addison, how are you?
I'm doing well. Apologies, I'm not there in person. Got a little bug, but we're gonna make this work remotely as best I can. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so outside of what was in the council packet would just really pin down on specifics, staffing levels, finer points like that. Not much is changing from years past. On my end of the operation, I'll start us off here and then Aaron's going to speak more to what's going on at the PRA. But we haven't really gained any new roads. We have paved some alleys. That's going to change aspects of the operation, making things quicker, more efficient. Plowing in dirt is never something fun for the operators or the homeowners in the area, but we do what we can. Our territories still the same. Again, alleys have been paved. There is a new alley that is actually connecting First Avenue and Second Avenue. It's an extension of the Teller Alley. So, that'll be one of our dead ends that we hit with our loaders. But outside of that, we're still running the normal program. On a personal note, I'm proud of how well our operation is going, especially now that we have a national monument in our backyard. So it's good. Our level of service is up here, so we can only go up a little higher, I think, but don't hold us.
Addison, before you move from this slide, I know I have a
Yes.
question, but so does Jesse. So let Jesse jump in.
Yeah, so thanks for this. It's really helpful to visually see the plowing priorities. And this is primarily for streets and vehicular access. What is the priority on the pedestrian pathways?
So the pedestrian pathways, so that's going to be Chris's department, grounds department.
Okay.
So those get hammered out in transit. And when I say in transit, when Chris is heading to town hall, he gets it. When he's heading out to the PRA, he gets it. One of the main things is the new pathways that CDOT built for us. Made it a lot easier to get from point A to point B and make it more efficient to clear out items. But the grounds department or division, is very limited in their time. So, they start out and they got to jet straight over to town hall, and then they got to go to historic park. And then from historic park, they got to jump all the way to the FAP and make sure that's done by the opening and get the Nordic Center taken. So while those operations are open, when the historic park is closed, when the Day Lodge is closed last year, hoping that's not the case again, but for tubing business, but those were a little lowered on the priority list. So we try to maintain that higher level of service, but it does change depending on the day. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, that's really helpful to understand. Thank you. And that we are responsible for plowing along, when you say the CDOT pathways, you're talking about the pedestrian walkways along Highway 9, right?
And this slide is actually
Oh, there
our
we
pathways.
go. Perfect. Yep.
Yes. So those ones on Highway 9, yes, they're a little challenging, but it does help things. When it comes to our pathways, there are 2 pathways in all the pathways we maintain in the town of Frisco that we abandon for safety reasons. One would be in the reserve, and then one would be along Highway 9, where our big rock retaining wall is on southbound after you pass the animal hospital. Just from a safety aspect, it's bad for our crews. And unfortunately, in the past, we've seen pictures of folks going past our detour that we set up to try to reroute them to that upper path next adjacent to the neighborhood up on top of that little hill. But it's just it's a losing battle. And we're in the process right now of working with our on-call engineer And hopefully we can get a TAP grant from CDOT to remedy that situation. So we're trying to come up with an alternative. And then in the reserve, it's just too compact, and with it being a pathway easement, we just have no room to really maneuver and store snow. I myself have gone through that tiny path on a loader in the spring, and it is no fun. So we get what we can, but I think 2 out of a lot is a pretty good number. Outside of that, just to walk everybody through just a little bit, we have a 2 a.m. operation. If we get snow accumulation of 4 inches or more, everything works counterclockwise. We start at the Public Works facility and we head north to the business district, and then work counterclockwise with Water Dance, being the last thing that gets hit by our plow trucks. As you all are well aware, at this point in time, our fleet of loaders, we just swarm the core area of Main Street and try to get that open as soon as possible. When there's a 2 a.m. shift, we get that 4 inches early in the morning, and we start at 6 a.m. Then we clean up what we can, and then we'll call in the troops at 2 a.m. the following evening with our sidewalk machines starting an hour earlier to just help stay ahead of the pack on that. Just to kind of outline that there, our dead ends are just kind of those outliers. We have one loader that attacks all those and assists on Main Street when it's over. And then I would assume this year, since Chris is down in staff, that this dead ends loader can help him as well and his crew. Again, we'll go back to these pathways here. These pathways, by all means, it is not just a solely grounds division show with all these pathways. Again, our crew is very good at communicating, teaming, and just making sure we get everything done as quick as possible. So there's always a lot of radio chatter. And if anybody ever wants to come and ride along in a plow truck, then we would love it. Outside of that.
Addison, while we're on that slide, just quickly.
Yeah.
Is on Belford from 5th going towards the elementary school, is that not shown on the rec path because that's done by the street plows, or is that?
Yes. Yeah. So that pathway is treated just like the same street connected pathways, let's say on Creekside and stuff like that. Our plow truck, once we constructed that was just another pass for our plow truck. And then, as you all have seen, when we're doing cleanup and widening after the fact, our loaders will push out as wide as possible. So, that's, I'm a little biased about the second Belford pass. So I just try to emphasize to our crews that those are just as important, especially the street connected ones, as the standalone paths.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, outside of that, it's pretty standard procedure. One item I think that is worth noting for our operation, and it's going to be related more to grounds, would be the ice rink or ice surface at Meadow Creek. We are going to do whatever we can to ensure that it is open and operational, but it will definitely look more like it has in years past, which, this is one man's opinion and feedback that I get from families that I know who skate and stuff like that is, it's an incredible amenity, and they know how difficult it is. And with Chris being down one person, we will absolutely get to it whenever possible. So, I would rather now in front of all of you, just set the expectation. Over promise and under deliver.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And on that note, I will turn it over to Erin. Her operation is definitely a little bit more exciting than mine.
I do get to talk about the fun stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Addison.
Yes.
Don't
Yeah.
underestimate yourself, Addison.
Thank you.
Plowman's great. Well, my name is Erin. I am the general manager at the Adventure Park, for those of you that I have not met. So yeah, today my goal is to share with you some of our winter operation updates, tell you kind of the exciting things happening, any updates we have, and then just a general timeline for the season. So I'll kind of follow some notes here because I've got a few things, but I'll try and keep it condensed and obviously ask questions if you have any of those too. So to start off, let's see here. We'll start with snowmaking. That is kind of vital to our operation. So we are fortunate right now that we do have a full snowmaking crew. They began work on October 17th for a training week. And then we actually were making snow very soon after that because we had some cold temps kind of wrapping up the month of October, if you will. So right now we do have 2 different night crews that are available to work, 2 different day crews. That's really based on temperatures. So 24 hours a day, we are capable of making snow, which, days like today are a little rough. So we have, hopefully this is the last day of some warm fall temps, but as the weekend or week carries on, we definitely will be making some snow around the clock. So we did get a good base started the end of October and just started actually moving some snow last week in order to start building the hill, getting a little base going. So that is a great start to the season compared to the last couple of years, if you will. Let's see here. Our number one focus really with snowmaking is really vital to getting our tubing lanes, up and running. So we are shooting for a tentative opening date as Thanksgiving, which has been, I don't think it's happened for a couple of years, is my understanding. So we do have we're very hopeful right now that is, pretty confident that will hopefully happen as we continue making, but having 3 tubing lanes to begin the season is our goal. After that, we do have the beginner ski and ride hill, so trying to fill out the snow for that as well. And then anything we can do to move snow over to the Nordic Center, to have our lesson area behind the Nordic building in between the ball field, and then at least a minimum 1 to 1.5 K loop that we can get started should we have lower snow anyway. Excuse me. So great start to the season is regarding snowmaking. To kind of shift into like our snow tubing in general. The season, as I mentioned, we are hoping to open Thanksgiving. That will go through our season will end on April 9th. And then right now our hiring has actually been going very well. So we're really excited, thankful for all the housing opportunities the town has been working hard towards. That is absolutely vital to us getting seasonal staff on board. So right now, I think we have filled just about every bed we have available. And truly, if we didn't have that, we would not be able to hire as many staff as we can. So we're really kind of having a very positive start to the season. Our attendance, so guest service folks and anybody that's working on the tubing hill will actually start training next Thursday, the 17th. So we've got just about a week to go through some trainings. We'll probably have some part-timers that might come on a little bit after that, but we do have a pretty full staff to start the season. So we'll hope we can continue that going. The goal of the season, as far as our tubing times, will be pretty similar to years past. So tubing sessions will be 1-hour sessions, starting every 15 minutes. So our earliest time as of now will be a 10 a.m. start. Our latest time will be 5 p.m. And we might adjust that through the season just based on weather, temperatures. Typically, we wrap up a little earlier in the day come late March as things are getting warm too. So we have opened up our tubing reservations as of October 1st. We've had a lot of online stuff, so that's great to start right now. We actually, because of not knowing with our snow conditions and weather, this is the first year that we actually have not opened up Thanksgiving Day just yet. We are hoping to do that soon. So right now you can actually make a reservation December 10th through April 9th, not right away, because this is some issues we've had in the past where we've had lots of reservations that we've had to cancel. So we're actually going to be touching base tomorrow to see with our snowmaking progress. We might open up starting December 1st. We're kind of just working back in the calendar to not overpromise folks. But as far as any revenue we've collected thus far, it's definitely on track considering we have not taken reservations for Thanksgiving to December 9th or 10th, I should say. What we got here? As far as fees, really nothing has changed regarding tubing. Those have remained the same this year. The only change we've had is our beginner ski and ride tickets. And let's see. That's kind of the main gist. As far as new things that we have happening, we are adding theme weeks this season. So in doing that, we're really trying to create a more positive guest experience, try and have another dimension to what people are coming out for and not have it just a Tubing Hill. We had kind of hear a lot of that last year of what else is there to do? What else is going on? So we're really trying to create that. Part of that is opening our cafe back up to having, we're attempting to do, and we're hoping to do this as well, as have only Colorado-based beverages. So anything that's going to be beer, wine related will be more locally sourced. In addition to that, we're bringing back some of our hot menu items. Because of COVID and things happening the last few seasons, we have not been able to do that. So this will be great to have, a more full menu coming back too. One of the other exciting changes we're doing is we are working on right now to get a Spanish voiceover. So having that for our safety video. So in the past, we've had a handout that we could provide to folks, but we do get a lot of Spanish speaking population that comes to visit. So this will be a nice addition for anyone. Once they check in, they head out to the yurt for the safety video. We now have that option too, and hopefully adding some subtitles as well. As far as other new things, we do have a new snowcat that was budgeted for 2022. We're hoping to have that here in the end of November. So that will be nice to have. The staff is very much always looking forward to, any sort of new equipment we have out there as well. And then part of our, just kind of our staff retention. So really trying to create and revamp our positive experience for staff. It's tough to keep people out there when they have other options in the community. So obviously our wages going up was a tremendous help also with hiring. But in addition to that, the staff and managers have been working to find ways during our training week continuously throughout the season. How can we make this a really positive work experience for them and make it fun for them too, which kind of showcases to our guests as well. Any questions about tubing before I kind of move along? No, good, great. I get to talk about the fun stuff. This is, we're excited. So hope you guys are excited too and can join us. Oh, one last thing, actually, I should mention. So sorry, regarding tubing as well, we are going to be adding a weekly email that goes out to any guests that have and the majority, I would say 85–90% of our guests make their reservation online. So typically when they do that, they get an email receipt that has their reminders of what they need to do and checking in early and so on that no one really reads. And then they get there and haven't filled out their waiver and so on. But we'll be sending a week prior to their visit, kind of just to those folks that have their reservation, information that hopefully will help streamline that process. So it gives them a little bit more to be prepared when they show up. Also helps our staff so they don't have to mitigate as many things. Excuse me. And then, we're just hoping to showcase the theme weeks and get people kind of on board with that too. So the kind of shifting along then to the beginner ski and ride hill. So just one of the updates we have here. The open date for that will likely be later than Thanksgiving. It's really because tubing is that focus. Oops, sorry. And we're kind of, as of now, stating that'll be no later than Christmas Eve. We really do hope that will be earlier than that, but just once again, try not to overpromise folks. That is one that most people either purchase in person or on the phone anyway. You can't really make a reservation online. So it's something we're kind of working through anyway. But the snow schoolers, that is our ski school operation that we're partnering with last year. We'll be working with them again this year. And one of the new things that they're bringing to the table, in fact, they're getting this set up this week. They've been working with community development to have a temporary structure that will be out on, I guess, what would be the south side of the day lodge, in between there and the skate park. That's going to have a small rental fleet of ski and ride gear for Alpine. So we do, through the lessons that they provide, that is a question we get regularly. So now we'll actually be able to provide that. So this is going to be part of their kind of running our contract just the way we have in the past year. But hopefully that'll bring in a bit more revenue for us and also provide an opportunity for any folks that do come through the door who want to rent. That's another question we get as well, that they can have the opportunity to rent from those folks too. So that's kind of exciting as well. Any ski and ride questions? Doing good? Okay. Nordic Center. So this is some fun stuff as well. Nordic Center, all of our staff have been getting things ready. We just had a season pass party last week, sold a lot of season passes, and we've got 2 groomers again this season. So just really trying to put out quality grooming is really our number one focus. And we know that's what people come for. So we want to make sure that we can provide the best that we can. One of the new things we do have going on is a sit ski. So this is the first time that we've actually had one at the Nordic Center. And we do have an instructor as well that will be able to teach, whether it be adaptive ski lessons or with groups and such. So we're pretty excited. We should have that here in early December, I think is when it should arrive. And we'll be updating some of our website once we have that available too. In addition to that, we do have a Spanish speaking instructor that'll be starting this season. And
I think she'll be working probably 2 days a week, but we'll have the opportunity to actually provide lessons in Spanish. So just some new things that are, we're really excited about with our staff too. Same thing for the Nordic. They'll be bringing back hopefully soup, some warmer beverages, bringing back alcohol again, which has not been the last couple of years, I do believe, just with all the COVID stuff happening. So really, everyone's just really excited to get back out there as we're kind of getting back to a little normalcy too. So as far as skiable trails, like I said, we will hope to open Thanksgiving. That is always what we're shooting for. And it's really just based on that snow. So hopefully in the next week, we'll have a better idea of what's going on. One of the other exciting kind of last things to talk about grooming is we do have a position that we just filled a couple of weeks ago. That's our recreation service tech, who actually is going to be maintaining our magic carpet on the tubing hill, in addition to all of our snowcats. So already has been a tremendous help with getting us prepared for the season, preventative maintenance, and doing all the things that we need to keep our operation running smooth. So things are looking good, you guys. Overall, we just got to say it's all good news. Lastly, a couple things. So 2 Below Zero, that is our concessionaire for the sleigh rides we do out there. We'll be working with them once again. I do believe that they start theirs, I want to say it might be even next week. They do their summertime program as well, where they have chuck wagon rides. So obviously it's the dinner sleigh rides and hot cocoa rides for the winter. And then lastly, our free sledding hill. So that's going to be just across the parking lot by the Nordic Center side. We do get a lot of folks that utilize that when our tubing hill is sold out. And I will say 30% of our retail is purchasing plastic sleds. It's mind blowing. But yeah, I mean, for any of you guys that haven't been out there at the Nordic Center or the tubing hill, please come visit us. We're just excited and looking forward to season and having staff back too. So any questions I can answer for you guys?
2 questions. One, do we get a lot of winter weddings out there?
We do not. So the main reason too is we just don't have the facility. So summertime, we do a lot of facility rentals for that. Because of our tubing operation being so big, we just don't either have the evening staff available or the turnover time to clean our space.
Yeah.
Because with tubing times ending at 6 o'clock, you can imagine you have 400 to 500 people and families eating food and coming through our great room, if you will. As far as the indoor space goes, it's really hard to get folks. And I should have mentioned as well, as far as our operating days, Thursday through Monday will be the norm. Tuesday, Wednesdays closed as of now. However, during our holiday peak weeks, last couple of weeks, December, we are hoping to open for those too. So as we're onboarding staff this coming week, we'll be kind of working through our schedule to see if we can do that too. But yeah, we really don't. Are you talking about more outdoor based too?
Well, I was just also going to ask a follow-up about the like wedding platform, like up by Dickie's closer. And I was just curious if that's getting
we've
used
had
at all.
no requests for it. I will say that. So if we did, it's not to say we couldn't accommodate. I want to say part of the sleigh rides does utilize
There's somewhere.
now that they've shifted, actually that parking wouldn't be, it's technically not off the table if somebody really wanted to do that, but because we're not, I mean, they'd be walking through snow. We're not plowing that area. It wouldn't be as ideal. Yeah, we just haven't had the request actually.
And then on the sledding, do we do like a take back or resell or recycle those?
So as far as recycling, yeah. So Public Works and Parks actually has worked with us, and there's normally, I think they might call it the graveyard. Usually there ends up being a lot of sleds at the bottom of the hill. So they normally put them in, and Addison, you can speak to this too. If we have the recreation department trailer that's normally parked out there. So they typically utilize that as we get ones that have been damaged. Sometimes we do get folks that come back in and bring in ones that they've used for the day and let somebody else borrow. As of now, we do sell them, and really because we don't, they're actually pretty durable, I will say. But in case they were break, we don't really want to hand one off to somebody in case there was an issue. So right now they are purchasing them new when they do come to us. And that's something we can certainly look at in the future too, if it's worth from a
It's
sustainability
like,
perspective.
I don't know how much you guys collect, but we have like dumped truckloads in Breckenridge, and
Of
it's
sleds from-
it's appalling.
Yeah.
So whatever, I'm glad we're recycling them. But
No, let me touch
however
base
we
with
can-
these guys and see from years past, just to get me up to speed on what type of quantity and volume we are seeing behind. Because a lot of folks are taking them with them to their Airbnb or wherever they're going from too. But I know that there definitely are some that are left behind or damaged, and we can, certainly look into how we can adjust that.
We take a lot. Yeah. No, we take a lot. That is part of the daily routine. For the grounds division, it's just stopping by, seeing if there's anything left at the bottom. Again, in that graveyard area. And then, we pack that trailer to the gills. So we do recycle
Right.
a ton.
Did you say 30% of your revenue comes from the sleds?
Retail revenue
Retail.
from sleds, yeah. So really, we sell gloves, goggles, any essential clothing items, really chapstick, sunscreen and such. But I was going through our numbers last year just for fun and I was like, wow, okay. And a lot of that too, I would say and that is from the previous season. So let me not speak to that from maybe completely years past. That's because we had very limited tubing hours last year with just being so short staffed. So anytime we're sold out, hey guys, would you like to purchase a sled? So we're basically, it's kind of that secondary, trying to give people something to do so they're not, for turning folks away. So hopefully this year with having more staff that allows us to have more lanes operating, we aren't turning away folks as much. Therefore, they won't be buying sleds and we'll also be generating more revenue through our tubing. Yeah, that is the goal. If we can accommodate them, we would love to.
Is there any signage for people to know that like you will recycle broken sleds and not, don't take them home?
There
and
is
throw 'em in
regarding
the garbage?
recycling. I would say, Addison, I don't know if it's more just sled at your own risk as far as I
Yeah.
know, but maybe that is something we certainly could add to say, hey, if you're not taking it with you, bring it on back or something that we can do. So just to utilize that.
Just so they
That
don't.
a sign would be
wind up
simple
in
to
the
add. Absolutely. I'll put
garbage.
that down too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, we could definitely do that. And also my sincerest of apologies. I do have to got a family thing that I need to attend right now. So thank you very much. I will
Thanks, Addison.
head out.
Use your family, thank you, Addison.
Thanks.
Is it even possible to recycle sleds?
Yeah, so the Center for Hard to Recycle Items in Boulder, I'm assuming that's where you're taking them. I hope it's where you're taking them. They can take like the rigid plastic, weird shaped, garden hoses and sleds and 5-gallon buckets and things like that. It should not be going to our scrap.
That's
Hopefully.
great. No.
I always find a bunch of them at the bottom of the 3rd Street sledding hill. I think people bring them over there and just ditch them. There's yeah. I wish we could find a different item besides a plastic sled. If we're,
Metal.
Radio flyer.
I mean,
Yeah, renting radio flyers.
what else people could do?
Toboggans.
Just encourage people to bring their own, I guess.
One thing is people come there because they want, you do get some local folks that is the tubing hill in Frisco here, but
Right.
the goal is that most of them are coming because they do want to tube. So I really do think we'll be able to accommodate a lot more of that this year with our staffing and with having a great start to our snowmaking season. So
Use the sledding hill.
some people just want to.
Sometimes
Or
we
I
get
will
turned
say
away
too,
because there's too many people, that's.
our biggest thing as well is our riders do have to be 36 inches tall to ride. So we do get folks that might have a 1-year-old or a little one. And the only way for them to enjoy something is to be on the lap of a parent, which we do not allow on the tubing hill. So I think that is a secondary thing for some families with really young kids as well too.
How much does a sled cost?
The ones that we retail go for 20. So obviously that's, our cost is probably I think it's $8 or $9 if I'm not mistaken. Mhm.
We could probably source them cheaper, but.
No.
Excellent, thank you.
You guys have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bring back the original sledding hill at the old ski jump. Park and Sack stop.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Can't wait. We're not getting it. Next up for this afternoon.
It's actually National Monument. I don't know which one.
Is our transportation alternatives discussion. Don, good to see you back. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and welcome Kent Willis. He's our transit board member and representative, so glad to have him here for this conversation. Staff report goes through a number of different things, so I just want to highlight a few things there as we go through and really leave some good opportunity for discussion among council and what our next steps forward are. So excuse me, increasing availability of transportation options has been a goal of council and the community for a number of years. I mean, just recently, the 2019 community plan highlights a number of different things related to mobility. A few examples are improving the frequency and proximity of transit options around town, placing a higher priority on bicycle and pedestrian movements, expanding regional transportation options in collaboration with the county and CDOT, improving public infrastructure such as pathways, roads, sidewalks, and transit to enhance safety and maintain quality of life, encourage use of alternative transportation modes such as mass transit, walking, biking for local trips and regional trips. There's also a number of actions that are identified in the community plan. And to council's credit, we made a ton of progress as a town on a number of these things. Some of these are adopt and implement a complete street plan that includes safe and attractive multimodal options. So, hey, we're working on that. Begin enforcing of parking time limits, so we get that turnover of vehicles. Improve crossings of Highway 9, as the winter operations just pointed out. Hey, we've got that new tunnel out at the PRA. Explore a Frisco Flyer type shuttle around town. Need some work to do on that one. And then also prioritize implementing the Trails Master Plan. And again, we're really working, especially on the human powered side of our mobility, to really make that better. However, transit's maybe lagged a little bit behind on that. There haven't been a ton of improvements, and actually in a number of cases, especially in the past couple of years, transit's maybe gone backwards because of the lack of drivers, specifically with the Summit Stage. We do have some really great regional service that goes from Denver to Frisco, stops at the Frisco Transit Center and moves on to Grand Junction. That's Greyhound. We've got the Mustang, and as of May, we've got this smaller shuttle with more frequent service called the Pegasus that goes from Avon to Denver. So that there's really a lot of options for people if you're taking a day trip to Denver or trying to get to the airport or something like that, to utilize some of that transit. But the only drop off and pickup location is the Frisco Transit Center for each of those. So there's still no, especially if you're coming from a neighborhood, there's not a lot of great opportunities to get from your house to the transit center to then take that shuttle. So that's where our lack is. So we do have the Summit Stage. They have 3 routes that originate from the Frisco Transit Center. One goes a direct route to Silverthorne. Another goes to Copper Mountain with stops along Main Street on the way out there. And then the third one is to Breckenridge. And from what I understand from the stage, the Frisco to Breck route is actually the heaviest used route in their system. And that has a number of stops that really serve the local community. That stops at the hospital, it stops at the county commons, it stops at the high school, it stops at a number of places as you're getting out to Breckenridge. However, that's only an hourly service now. So if you really, really have to plan your day and time it right in order to utilize transit for your daily business. So where do we go from here, and what are we missing? And in years past, and the community plan brought up the Frisco Flyer. We got to bring back the Frisco Flyer. I've looked and I haven't found a Frisco Flyer map or any good idea of what this actually is. My understanding is it operated from the late 90s to about 2001 or so. It was operated by Summit Stage, and it went through a few neighborhoods during ski season. So again, sounds great. It sounds like the Boreas Loop in Breckenridge or something like that, that the stage operates. And it went away when town council at that time decided not to continue and participating in the funding of that because it cost money. So 20 years we've been out without this local service other than Summit Stage on Main Street. So what options are there? And so for the past about 6 months or so, staff has been talking to a private company called Via that operates what's called microtransit in a number of different communities and partners with communities to set that up, get that running and operate it. Microtransit is a lot more of your on-demand point-to-point service. So, and it would be a shared service too. So whereas Uber or Lyft, which again, it would be a great option if there was more of them around here, but it's really difficult to utilize that. Uber or Lyft takes you from your house to your destination, or from your origin to your final destination. And you're the only person on there, or you and your party. With Via or these micro transit providers, they will pick other people up en route, and they coordinate that through their app. So it's another opportunity to get more riders on small shuttles and a more point-to-point basis. So as you can imagine, that's cost money as well. So there is a significant cost investment. And after our initial discussions with VIA, we as a staff and with some input from a couple of council members that also participated in those conversations, really, it did not seem like it was going to be a cost-effective solution for Frisco to go it alone. So we have been talking to Summit County and the Summit Stage, and more recently, some of the other jurisdictions to see if there would be interest in doing a more regional collaboration on microtransit and supplementing the Summit Stage services. So with that, that's where we're at now with this. Our next steps would be to, with council's direction, would be to take that idea in collaboration with the other communities, take that to the transit board, present that, and see if Summit County would be willing to take the next step and really take the lead on this, because it really does need to be a regional operation. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or start the conversation. If you have any questions for Kent on where maybe the transit board might be on any of this, and then we can go from there.
Do they have set vehicle types for VIA, or is it kind of?
It's random. So in our conversations, because what we were looking at, and so one of the benefits of this smaller is you don't need a commercial driver's license for the drivers. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges, as we know, for Summit Stage and some of these other larger transit providers. But if you look around, the Denver is starting one, and they use a shuttle van that's about the size of a Sprinter van. When our conversations are talking maybe a minivan, maybe like a Subaru, like a 4 to 6 to 8 passenger maximum type vehicle.
But in that meeting, they had also mentioned that there was an EV option. Like if you wanted to,
Spend the money.
yeah, I mean, but
Yeah. Well, I guess where my question is really original, one is getting around the CDL issue, right, which is paramount. And two, though, Uber and Lyft, you do have a deadheading problem where people are driving around looking for service. And so I believe the intention of this is that it makes it more efficient because it's using the app to try and coordinate those routes. But if you only have what kind of car, is it just a sedan? Then you can still only pick up 3 people, and drive them around. So I was just curious if they have a preferred vehicle type, or it's more like we get to decide and then they drive it around or something to that effect.
What I would say is it's based on what their anticipated ridership is. So again, we looked at it just Frisco, and we're obviously a smaller community. We would probably have less ridership. So they were looking at these smaller vehicles. If you're looking at a more of a regional service, I'd anticipate maybe more of a mix. So maybe there's a dedicated Frisco one that maybe is like a smaller 4 to 6 passenger vehicle, and a larger or the more regional route or the majority of the vehicles might be Sprinters. We haven't gone down that route with them yet, but certainly I think that is a viable opportunity.
The one question is, you are talking about sort of the regional nature is exactly that. Like, would there be hubs where there's kind of dedicated vehicles? Do they overlap partially? Like, in those, like, you're in Frisco, but really you're in the county commons, or would it be like the same vehicle in Frisco driving all the way to Dillon and Keystone and connecting service that way?
I think potentially,
All of those
yes,
things?
all of
Yeah.
the above, and yes
Okay.
to all of that. And that's where, that's the nice thing about that, is it is an on-demand thing, and they can really coordinate some of this. And discussing with them, there can be a combination of fixed route through neighborhood as well as this on demand. So there's a number of different solutions that could play into it. And that's where one of the recommended next steps that I think that we would recommend is actually do a study on what would be the best way to implement that in order to coordinate with the Summit Stage and supplement that service, and potentially maybe even offer suggestions to adjust Summit Stage routes to better coordinate with this additional service. So I think that's might really be the next starting point on this.
I would also, sorry, Andy, I would also just recommend talking to the school district, because so many of the students between the high school and the middle school try to utilize Summit Stage and they don't line up well with classes. And so is there a minimum age requirement? Can they ride without a parent? Like, some of those questions would VIA be available to students as well?
Yeah, and certainly it is available to some students. I don't know that there is a minimum age, but they have in past case studies, including Summit County, Utah, have shown that there is an opportunity for middle and high school age kids to utilize the
Great.
service.
Thank
And
you.
mom or dad can set them up and whatever else.
I yield my time.
Yeah, no. To sort of set this up a little bit, I mean, me and Elizabeth happened to meet with Via and Don and this is the answer, but we are too small, period. Right? This is going to be like a $2.5 million ask to do it around Frisco, but that's not the answer. The answer is to do it Summit County blanketed, all the towns, everybody needs buy-in. It would be less expensive for everyone that way. This is the answer as far as, getting our people around and getting people from here to there. And when we talked about, well, if we did it out of Frisco, then there would be a hub because the people working in Frisco need to get to Wilderness or wherever, and it's like, that's where it doesn't remotely make sense for us to do it on our own, but we need to champion this. We need to push this to all the other municipalities. They have to buy in. We have to do this because this is the answer, the sky is the limit on their ability. It might be that, you're coming out of the middle school and you need to go to Summit Cove. And so it works out that way. And, they'll take you there, So I'm fully, but this is something we have to do, but it's not something we are going to do on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I could add, I mean, you bring up a great point that I should have mentioned as well. When we began these conversations, we recognized that, this isn't just a Frisco only service. A lot of our workers live in Wilderness or Silverthorne or Dillon or whatever else. And especially if you're going to Dillon, you're not taking the Summit Station deal. And so how do we address that? And so that's where we did say, okay, we'll have a hub at the Silverthorne Transfer Center and at Dillon, at a location in Dillon as well, just so that there's a set place for people to pick up and get into Frisco and back. But that adds a ton of cost because we're expanding service to these areas. But that's the only way it's actually going to solve the problem. A lot of times especially rural transit, you hear about the first mile and the last mile. And that's what this service really could do to complement some of the Summit Stage services and routes, is act as that first or last mile from the house to an existing fixed route transit stop, get them on the way there.
Yeah, our challenge is to get everyone else to be in on it and actually, what's that?
Where have,
Where we at with that?
where are we at with
So-
everybody else?
Tom and
we brought this up at the mayors and managers meeting and the other last week, whatever that was, recently. What day is it? And everybody, obviously Breck's in a good spot, but they also think there's some value they could be found, but everybody was in full support of maybe working with the Summit Stage board and seeing what the next steps are, because I think everybody, at least all the other mayors and managers agreed that this is something they're hearing and could all benefit from, including the school district was huge on this plan, and we'd like to be a partner in it as well, because they're having similar issues.
Copper Mountain and Vail Resorts, they do have some transit as well. But for the Keystone area and the Copper Mountain area, we should definitely bring them into the conversation as well.
And money, and they got a little money.
Sorry, the resorts. It's funny that you said, I'm reading.
I just had a couple questions. I'm assuming that the vehicles can be outfitted to carry gear, both skis and bikes. Okay. And then the other thing, obviously, the not having to have the CDL is fantastic, much easier to get drivers. But what kind of training do they go through? Are they experienced in driving in this climate? Especially for putting school children on these vehicles?
Yeah, I don't have great information on that other than talking to Via. Certainly there are a number of case studies of systems that have gone into operation, including one Tom might be familiar with and be willing to share a little information on his experiences with Via in Summit County, Utah.
The vehicles have to be outfitted correctly, and Via's, there's other companies that do this now, but Via has that experience in a mountain climate. As well, they've gone through the growing pains of how to train drivers. And have experienced a lot of that stuff. Summit County, Utah piloted a lot of that, so they can bring that experience.
Yeah, this is key. So with this, there are a few other things that we're obviously missing, infrastructure wise, as you're talking, like implementing the complete streets plan and getting Granite and Galena done and whatever other connectivity that we're needing to do. That's all really important, but it all goes into this greater discussion about workforce housing. And when we come along to the area where we actually end up maximizing density and building greater workforce housing than maybe we're looking at it today, this has to be part of that answer. In order to be able to, to offer less parking, you need to offer a way to get from A to B. And so that's part of the whole answer. I really hope to lean on Tom here to, because it's going to be on you to get the buy-in.
I know a guy.
That's great, but can you convince the other municipalities to get involved? It sounds like there's maybe buy-in. So, the question there is, how much does it actually cost individually with a blanketed service? We really only looked at Frisco as a service. There's no way that if we implemented countywide, it's going to cost us $2.5 million. That was just to bring the whole thing here. So I would really hope that it might actually be reasonable for everybody individually.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, we did look at it for a very specific service area and just to get an idea. And again, it wasn't the final solution. It was, okay, this is what it could be. It was a range of costs based on a number of assumptions. So that number may be lower, maybe higher if we were to do it just in Frisco. But I think a very important point though is first off is there's a ton of grant funding available to both get it set up and then to supplement ongoing operations, which is great. And we could, especially if we work with the Summit Stage to partner with that, there's a lot of opportunities there to make that work and be a lot more viable and work together. With that though, looking at budget numbers, so and this is towards the end of the staff report, we talk about budget a little bit here. We don't have a ton budgeted for transportation, as you're probably aware. 2022 budget included $200,000 for a transportation master plan, which we have not yet fully pursued yet, because that scope has been evolving, which includes our discussion tonight. Maybe we utilize some of those funds for an overall transit study in collaboration with some of the other communities. 2023, we have, and all the way through 2027, there's only $50,000 in that capital improvement plan. That's not going to be enough for our portion of transit. So there really will have to be a significant financial commitment in order to move this forward. And I do just really want to make sure that the council is aware of that.
Yeah, it still could be a six-figure ask.
Yeah, probably will.
Somewhere along the line of doing it in the rest of the county too.
It's still vehicular based, so I'm not sure, but are some of the multimodal funds through CDOT, would that be eligible to help fund a project like this?
Yeah. To my understanding, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. So yeah, there's a number of grant opportunities, both federal and state. It's just a matter of identifying how we want to pursue it, who our partners are going to be, who's going to be the lead. And frankly, if we do go regional, it makes sense that it would be Summit County that would be the lead agency on that. But I case certainly not speaking for them or volunteering. I guess I did volunteer them just now, but that's really the next step, is to work on that collaboration. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for Frisco to go it alone.
Hey, Don.
Yes.
So, hi, guys. Surprise. Surprise. To me, I'm hearing, I'm looking at the staff report, and it's the summary and background, it's pretty generic and open, which is good. But what I'm hearing in this discussion is there's three separate things here that I'm peeling off is one, one sounds to me like it's how are we going to transport the kids after school, which is a discussion perhaps we can enter with the school district and Summit Stage. And that's definitely at a county-wide discussion point. And then there was the other discussion of if we're looking at workforce housing and looking for better ways to move people around the town and the county, does that get facilitated with what the mythical Frisco Flyer once was, that had a set route that would go from perhaps the transfer station, picking up from a Summit Stage destination, and then circulating on a set route throughout town up to and including the adventure park. And then the third one I'm hearing is really what I define as that last mile, where folks are actually having a service take them to a particular location, which that sounds to me to be the most daunting. And it wouldn't be a visit from Kent without me asking for Summit Stage to have a stop at the adventure park going to and from Breckenridge. It's right on the route. And with that, we could get folks, that local circulator, if you will, could get folks out to the adventure park, if you will, and they could grab a Summit Stage bus to Breckenridge or over to the Frisco Transit Center, and from there go forward. And then so those are the three things as I see it. And I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention, if you haven't heard me talk about it already, is there is a local provider, a local transit company already providing this for selected neighborhoods in Breckenridge. I've had some super informal conversations with them that they would at least be, if we were wanting to get this going sooner than later, they would at least be willing to share the numbers that they're using in Breckenridge to see if we could even work it, right? There's a win-win for them, for both of us. We get a circulator. The model here would be probably a set route through town from the transit center. We get folks moving through town. They have drivers that they've trained that don't want to drive to the airport anymore. And lastly, the way the numbers work out is they get advertising because it's on the side of the van they're driving around. So that plays into the bottom dollar on that. They're not ignorant into the benefits of that for their organizations. That comes into that pricing on our end. Just sharing some thoughts.
No, certainly good thoughts. And when we spoke with the Summit Stage, that was one of the challenges that the stage has. They have a couple of routes where they go into neighborhoods, the Dillon Valley area, some routes in Breckenridge, and that's not the best use of those larger buses. The best use of those larger buses is like a direct route to and from without going into the neighborhoods. That way, that reduces their head times or lead times and everything else. So there is an option, I think, to Councilman Inkin's comment there, that we could get some of those middle-sized buses. So maybe the ultimate Summit County transit solution, that I'm not a transit expert, so this is just kind of throwing out ideas. We have the larger buses for a lot of these direct routes. We have some of these mid-sized buses like Rick was referring to for some of these in-town neighborhood circulator routes. And then we have the VIA or the smaller uses for the point-to-point and the on-demand shuttle service. So there's all of these things can work. I mean, Breckenridge has had the free ride for a number of years. That's a fixed route local circulator. It's a model that can work if you have the population to support it. So how do all of these things work together? How do all the jurisdictions get on board to fund that? And then how does the Summit Stage operate? And I think that's really big questions there.
Yeah, that's not a bad, Rick, and not a bad point. I assume you're referring to Peak One in the Warriors Mark neighborhood. So that's an RFP put out by the town of Breckenridge. And it has been awarded to Peak One the last couple of years, but then there's also the Quandary shuttle example, right? So not saying either of those are necessarily perfect, but that's another thing that I feel like maybe we haven't explored, or at least that your staff memo didn't mention, and that is just put out a fixed route to bid to one of these local companies and see if anybody picks it up. And I don't know off the top of my head, but I want to say it's probably 250 grand a year, lower than that. All right, see, somebody knows. So, but that could potentially be, you know, a smaller scale opportunity as well.
It could be.
That's interesting. I mean, it could be sooner to implement. Because
Exactly.
they're already here and all, but you know, per Summit Stage, they were having such a hard time staffing. You know, I don't know where Peak One's gonna be about
Well,
that,
in
but
this
that's. their
case, in this case, they're transit and they're not CDL.
So there's
Yeah.
drug testing is the biggest
Yeah,
part. So-
Okay,
Maybe you're only running.
you know, if, again, depending on what the goal is, and Rick outlined 3 different options, right? Getting workers around, getting kids to school, and then getting, you know, visitors and people out of their cars in general. Depending on what that goal is, you know, you can put that into the RFP and kind of really focus in on the first crack at this. But yeah, could certainly be an opportunity.
it'd be great to be able to spend money that we have in the budget towards this and actually have offered some sort of solution. Whether or not it works, we'll figure that out and whatnot, you know, without going through some more studies. I do believe that we, you know, studies aren't bad and we're gonna need that in order to probably convince the rest of the county to go micro transit. But like, if this was one of the steps, you know, on the way there, perhaps we do that and then eventually implement micro transit, then maybe we don't do this fixed route thing. Because, you know, that could actually cover all of that. That's obviously not great for Peak One, you know, for the future of, you know, that kind of contract, because they're looking for multiple years. But it could answer the call initially, right?
That's bid out every year, isn't it? Has to be.
Yeah,
Because
I
of the
like the
multi-year.
idea of seeing what we could do there for sure. Yeah.
I guess in my opinion, Frisco is such a small area. I just think our issue is getting people from community here to something here, like school or work. Like if we had that in Frisco, it's great, but I mean, I think the Summit Stage is pretty efficient as far as getting around Frisco, you know, or I don't know. I guess my issue would be like getting workforce from different communities, getting kids from different communities to whatever school they're going to. I don't know if I don't know. I just don't know within just the town itself, like putting this out there.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
To me, the view of this is like, we keep talking about less cars. And we keep trying to plan things for less cars. If we don't offer other options, multiple multimodal options, we will never have less cars. Everybody's going to drive to Main Street from the reserve, from your neighborhood and everywhere else. Like, they don't walk, or they walk for exercise, or they ride their bike. I mean, that's really it. You know,
I mean, I drive because I have 2 kids. I go to Silverthorne twice a day just for school. You know what I mean? Like I'm moving out of Frisco, back to Frisco, out of Frisco, back, you know, like I don't need help getting around Frisco. I need like connecting, you know, we all know I don't need to go to the middle school. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing,
But I think if we're offering less parking especially for workforce housing, right? They need to go to the grocery store, and Summit Stage is not going to help with that the way that it is right now, right? You can't carry your groceries so a lot
of people do though. I mean, I know a lot of people without car. I'm just saying the financial investment, because the transfer center is right by Whole Foods and it's right by Safeway. I mean,
yeah,
I just don't know if people are, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I just think we need to focus on a more connecting communities in different towns.
I think it's absolutely part of the thing, and the you know, and the VIA in all towns would be that answer. But today we don't have that buy-in from other municipalities. And you know, 2 weeks ago almost, I picked up a young Latina woman who was walking with her bags from Safeway, who got off of the bus and she couldn't even make it back to her house. Some guy was helping her and whatever. I drove her home, you know, I mean, like, because the stage just doesn't fulfill the need.
Because
You know, it does Main Street and it does Summit Boulevard, and that's great.
And it
But
can get you to
that's what I'm
Safeway, but
saying.
not
It's
necessarily
First
to
and,
your
what is it, first and last? The first and last stop are
Yeah.
the mile, right, is the key, you know, so, sorry, I don't mean to, you know, push.
It's good and it's part of the conversation. I think and I agree. I think there's a lot of steps we need kind of as lined out and as Rick kind of pointed at that, but I think we could start soon. I think we do reach out, have the conversation with the other communities which said they're interested in this and the stage particularly to see where we could go. And I don't know if Kent, I'd love to just to hear any conversations that the stage has had around this, or if this is any quick insights from you, if there are any on this conversation.
So just real quickly, Tom's assistant sent me an email, said I should come to the meeting today. So that's why I'm here. Thank you very much for doing that. I met with Tom and we were supposed to talk about town, and all we did is geek out on, the only thing I did was geek out on transit. So the stage, this is all news to me. I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that we need to explore. In my head, I'm already listing out all the negatives, the cons of doing this, because we got to figure out what those are so we can solve those problems to make it work. And so I'm really more interested in ultimately figuring out how to make it work, because ultimately I think Don's right. It's the first and last mile that you have to deal with. And the stage does great getting you from one place to another, but not to your house. And so we need to do a better job of that, I think. So just real quick, I was hoping, one of the things Tom and I talked about is that maybe I come to your work sessions more on a regular basis, like once a month, and do a 5-minute presentation. So just quickly, one of the things that we learned at the last stage meeting was that they've got a bunch of drivers online, new hires, and they're going to be about 5 drivers short, which is really kind of the borderline where they're going to think about implementing half-hour service, which is in my mind huge. Number one. Number two, we did talk about and Jesse, I've talked to the stage guys about CDLs and all that, and they gave me some really interesting information about that. We talked about how the stage is interfacing with the school district and how we can help. And there's one of the things that frustrates me is that the stage has 2 major restrictions in my mind in terms of regulations. One, they've got federal regulations that they have to deal with. And 2, they've got a union contract. And so those are some additional factors that you have to piece into the whole picture. It's easy to say, okay, you don't need a CDL license, but if these are county employees hired by the stage, the county has its own regulations. It's going to say they want to insist on certain things. Okay. I don't have time right now to give you all the details, but maybe we could find a time to do that. I'd love to talk to you about it, because then I geek out on transit some more. But those are the things. The other thing I want to add, which is kind of in line with what Don started with, but Tom Kohler, who is the 10-mile representative on the stage, has been working for years now on transit to trails. And I don't know how much you guys have heard about that, but there's now signs. County Open Spaces is working with the stage to implement and expand that. So we get people riding the bus to go to the trailheads to do recreate and then come back and catch the bus to wherever it is that they're going. But it's that last mile to getting them home, because you're right. People won't walk from Mountainside to Main Street. And even though it's a really short walk, it's much harder in the wintertime. But anyway, so I want to see if I can maybe be invited. I don't want to invite myself, but maybe be invited to talk with Don and Tom and whoever else about this VIA thing. I mean, I think that's just really exciting because I've thought for years we needed smaller buses. And I can talk to you about 40-foot buses versus 30-foot buses versus the cutaways, and I'm sure Tom can too, and all these, van kinds of things. And so, yeah, anyway, that's all unless you have a specific question for me, I don't want to interrupt any more of your time.
Nope, we appreciate that. And thanks for continuing to represent us on the stage board. And yeah, we'll include you in those conversations and kind of keep it going. Cause I know you're probably the biggest user of the summit stage I know. So
Have to admit, with COVID, I stopped using the stage because it was sketchy to me. But last year I rode it a lot, the copper, and we still were wearing masks, and now I started riding it to work and I'm feeling better about it. And so, yeah, I'm trying to get back to riding the stage more frequently. So, yeah, thank you.
keeping the conversation. Thanks, Ken.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of options. As we mentioned, we certainly can prepare a scope of an RFP for an interim Frisco Flyer type shuttle where we do have a neighborhood circulator on a fixed route. Immediately, though, I think we are, again, if council concurs, reach out to the other jurisdictions and really start pushing this idea, identifying some of the challenges as Kent mentioned, and certainly the union contract is one. I think that can be overcome with contract employees and some other things like that. So there's solutions for whatever challenge there may be. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend to, but certainly we identify those and move those forward as quickly as we can.
And I think kind of to what was referenced in your staff report, and also Andy mentioned it, but I think as we particularly move forward with the Galena Street project and other potential workforce housing projects that we do of scale, that we need to continue having this part of the conversation as part of that. Even they don't seem like the design part doesn't seem like it needs to have a traffic or transit portion, but I think it does to keep us moving forward with this and not let it get put to the wayside. Great. Anything else from above? Before we
No, thanks. Good conversation.
Everybody else good? We'll take your break until 7. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Ken.
I got all passionate.
It's good.
That I jumped on.
Just kind of loosening up. So intense. Okay. Austin has a very unique style, old school vintage sound. Eli. Okay. If Austin but still be true to himself and true to this song, he's gonna nail it. Okay. Yep. Thank you, sir. You chose a super easy artist to cover. Oh, yeah.
least I think it is. Yeah, well, there we go. Except I can't hear anybody.
Call the order of the regular Frisco Council. This time I'd like to open up public comment. Give public comment, they do so now. Please keep topic specific, written is not on the student's agenda. Like Thomas, no longer than 3 minutes. Online, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, follow me. So public comment. Comment back to mayor and council comments. I got a few, nobody else. One, I know you all should have received an email, but I've heard great things from all the work and effort that's gone in by our human resources team. The open enrollment, the way that they changed that up and made that work for the efficiency of the employees. Seemingly, and what I've heard going really well, so we thank Linda and all those that are in making it happen and taking care of our employees and being first. So I hope that ballots are being picked up out front at 7 o'clock and everyone voted. Voted. Not until we're out there. We'll do this too. If you have it, then you want to
Loud.
Yeah, I hope everybody participated in that. It's so late. Is the consent agenda.
Aaron.
Agenda. Approve the consent agenda. Number early is there a second? Oh, is there a discussion on the motion? Call the question, please.
Absolutely. Worthy.
Yes.
Held.
Yes.
Deacon.
Yes.
Palenko.
Yes.
Scripps Adrian.
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
Aronson absent.
Okay.
She's on.
Next up this evening is new business agenda item number 1. This is first reading of ordinance 22-15, ordinance in chapter 140 of the Code of Ordinance of the Town of Frisco, Colorado, concerning the Dillon Reservoir Recreation Area by amending section 140-1 concerning definitions, 140-3 concerning fires and fireworks, 140-4 concerning motorized vehicles and snowmobiles, 140-15 concerning water contact activities, 140-18 concerning prohibited watercraft, 140-19 concerning boat launches, 140-21 concerning special event permits, and 140-30 concerning violations and penalties. I'll now open up the public hearing. Turn over to staff. And Logan, good evening. Good to see you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Good to see everyone. Yes, so again, Logan Snyder with the Frisco Bay Marina General Manager. I'm here this evening to discuss the first reading of ordinance 22-15, amending chapter 140 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Frisco, Colorado, concerning the Dillon Reservoir Recreation Area. Bit of a mouthful there. So this ordinance was prepared by our town attorney, and Thad is here this evening in case you have any questions for him or for me that I can't answer, that we can go to him. So just some quick background information. Dillon Reservoir, owned and operated by Denver Water. The recreation within the Dillon Reservoir Recreation Area is managed by the Interagency Dillon Reservoir Recreation Committee, or DREC. DREC is comprised of the following agencies: Denver Water, Town of Dillon, Town of Frisco, Summit County Government, and the U.S. Forest Service. Each of which either own or manage land within the Dillon Reservoir Recreation Area. So per the Town of Frisco Home Rule Charter, every 5 years, each chapter of the Frisco Town Code is to be reviewed for possible amendment or repeal. Chapter 140 of the town code follows very closely the rules and regulations of the Dillon Reservoir Recreation Committee. In 2021, D recommended their rules and regulations. Staff has reviewed Chapter 140 and recommends amendments to 8 sections to more closely align with the changes from DREC. So at this point, Mayor, I was just wondering how you'd like to move forward with these. I can review each of them and the changes, or if the council packet was sufficient, or I can just general questions, or how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, I personally feel like the packet was well constructed and answered my questions. Counselor, you good? And we'll just go without a full.
One.
Yep, yeah, but then we'll go into questions. without-
No, I'm hearing all kinds of stuff. I'm just curious how DREC like amends their, like, is everybody a voting member? Do some groups have more than one representative? Like what is the governing process of DREC?
Right, so Town of Frisco, since I've started, I'm sitting and representing the Town of Frisco. So we have a member from Denver Water, the Forest Service, Dillon, myself, Town of Dillon. So it's a voting board that votes on these. As far as the changes and, how that verbiage is written, I would believe that's legal, but it's a voting committee.
Each jurisdiction equally represented.
Yeah.
Other questions for Logan at this time? Right, seeing none, I'll go to public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment on a specific agenda item, you may do so now. And I see Gary online. Gary, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Good evening, council. Gary Sonnet, Highlands Ranch. I have been a slip holder for the past 20 years. The purpose of myself coming out this evening is to ask the council to reconsider their decision as far as season pass holders having to park in the fruit stand lot. I'd also like to address, I believe the mayor had made some comments that he's tired of us complaining and taking the approach of woe is me. We are not complainers. We don't feel sorry for ourselves, but we do deserve respect. We come back year after year. We pay our slip fees. We pay the increases. We use the service department for seasonal maintenance. We pay for storage. We frequent the restaurants in town. And unlike other visitors to the marina, such as beach holders that bring their coolers, do not contribute any revenue to the town or to the marina, as well as cyclists that come in and park their cars and yes, pay an hourly rate. They also do not really contribute again to the marina or to the town, and as well as day users. So, I think that we're being treated somewhat unfair at this point, asking us to park in the fruit lot. There are many people that have physical limitations, and it's a long walk, from the marina to that particular lot. Myself, I have back conditions, but, I'm not going to ask for any kind of special treatment. Other situations that present themselves are weather conditions. As we all know, up in the county, a storm can pop up at any minute, and we have to run for our cars. It's an interesting run from the marina up to the fruit stand. So in closing, as I said, I'd like to have the council reconsider and give us the respect that we deserve. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. Anyone else wishing to make a comment on this particular agenda item around our ordinance with DREC? Else online, Kelly? Nope. Seeing none, I'll close public comment and back to Council discussion. I think we should do it. Motion for ordinance 22-15.
Just a reminder on the motion, we don't need to read the title again.
Just the
Ready?
number.
Just the number.
There. Council's.
Okay, where's the number? All right, I got it. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve on first reading ordinance 22-15.
It's been moved to approve by Councilmember Burley. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Held. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, can you call the question, please?
Lee, Held,
Yes.
Eaton,
Yes.
Malenko,
Yes.
Zach Adrian,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
absent, Burley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Logan. Appreciate it.
For not letting me read all that. Appreciate it. All those ordinances. Thank you.
Yeah, once was enough for everyone, I think, at least especially for Ted. Next up this evening is agenda item number 2, and this is a single-use plastics discussion. Don Hillary, welcome.
Right. Single-use plastics, everybody's favorite topic. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I know this is a new agenda or new business item, but this is really just a discussion. So just here to chat a little bit about the issues with single-use plastics. Before we start, 30 seconds of doom and gloom, and then I swear it will be over. I really want to focus on solutions tonight. But what good environmental discussion would this be if I didn't start with 30 seconds of doom and gloom? So plastics come from oil refineries, oftentimes in underserved neighborhoods, contributing to the larger problem of climate change. Here is the shrinking St. Mary's Glacier. Made me really sad. And despite our best efforts to put all the plastic in the recycling and where it should be, it often ends up in the ocean or in our rainwater, which is this other picture over here. So that's it. No more doom and gloom. Now we're going to talk about solutions. So really quick, I just want to go over some of the existing projects that we have to reduce our single-use plastics already in town. We have the Frisco Water Bottle Pledge, where visitors will sign a pledge in exchange for a reusable water bottle that they will use while they're here. We have the bag ban and disposable bag fee. We have a very small boomerang bag program. We have switched to using canned water at the Day Lodge in line with our recycling guidelines instead of boxed water. And this year we did our very first R Cup trial at Fall Fest, which if you're not familiar with R Cup, they are a company that brings in reusable cups for events. They also bring in bins to collect, and customers can get a new cup whenever they get a new beverage. And they put all their, or the idea is they put all their cups in those bins upon leaving the event. And our cup was expecting a 95% return rate on these cups, and we got a 99% return rate at Fall Fest.
That's awesome.
We also have some upcoming state legislation. So Plastic Pollution Reduction Act, HB 21-1162. This basically repeals the prohibition for local governments that wouldn't allow them to require or ban the use of sale of specific types of plastic or products. We are a little bit ahead of this already since we already have our plastic bag ban in place, but it will ban single-use plastic bags as well as styrofoam to-go containers starting on January 1st, 2024. However, that is just for larger establishments. So if there's a small retail food establishment that only operates in Colorado and has less than 3 locations, it does not apply to them. I have here the zero waste hierarchy that I just want to go over really quickly before we start talking about policies. So you can see at the top, those are our more preferred options. Down the bottom is less preferred or unacceptable, as this one calls it. There's lots of different versions of this triangle. But basically, we want to start by, we may not be redesigning any products here, but rethinking the way we do things, starting with that, and then reduce and reuse. And you see that's significantly above the recycle zone, where we focus a lot of our attention. So just keep this in mind as we start to talk about policies. So these policy examples were all in your staff report. They're all the same here. I just don't have the locations that were listed in there as well with the examples. I'm not going to go into crazy detail on these. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. These are just some examples, certainly not an exhaustive list of policies that or projects that we could do. But I just want to bring some of the, I don't necessarily want to call them best practices, but some other examples of policies that other local jurisdictions have put into place. And some of the ones that I found most interesting were the comprehensive ordinances that really roll some of those things together. So it's not just a ban on one item or another, but really brings in several things. But here for discussion, happy to answer any questions. If you all have other ideas that are not on this list, I'd love to hear them. And really just want to find out what your priorities are, if there are things on this list that jump out at you, and if we want to use that upcoming legislation as an opportunity to really continue our leadership in this space.
Thank you, Hillary. Appreciate that. And I'll jump. Can you remind me again? And I know if I should know this, but the skip the stuff, that's the to-go food orders and all the utensils and whatnot, or what else was in that? Or
Right.
typically been in that?
Typically, that is utensils, condiments, napkins. Some places will say, we'll ban them. Other spots will say you can only get them on request, or restaurants have to offer them. It's really up to you how we want to move, how someone would move forward with this. But yeah, generally, those are the items that are included.
On the polystyrene piece of the Plastics Pollution Prevention Act, did I get it right? I think I did.
Sounds good.
Yeah. You mentioned the size of retail, so that applies to the restaurants too, the business size and requirements. I thought it was going to be for all restaurants.
As I read through it, it was
Okay.
just for
Okay.
Colorado only and three or.
Okay,
three
so
or
that
fewer did not
applies to
apply.
polystyrene and the plastic. All the plastics, really. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
polystyrene.
I
and plastic.
misunderstood. Well, I haven't dug into that.
Or yeah,
closely, but the
possibly I
polystyrene-
misunderstood it too. I mean, I was just reading through
Okay.
reading through the ordinance, but yeah, certainly if you know other things about that, please.
No, I was just asking for, I don't know.
Questions, or I'll jump in unless it's specific.
On Friday, I took part in this short-term rental discussion with the industry and each township. And this was one of the things that actually came up as a big thing, because like Breck was pushing, I forget who it was from Breck, but they were like, I go to the supermarket and I see all of these tourists buying these huge things of the plastic water bottles. Thank you. And how can we deter that? Right? Or how can short-term rental property managers deter that? Or how can the townships and Tamara Pogue was like, well, I don't know, Frisco's about to talk to it. Why don't you ask them? And and so I had nothing to add because we haven't really discussed it yet, and I can tell you where I come from, but I don't know where we're going to land or where everybody else is or what, but this definitely seems like when I'm talking amongst a forum like that, Summit County and everybody else around us, we seem awfully small to be the ones to implement something major like this in this kind of forum. So personally, for this right now, I'm not behind the idea of doing it. I'm behind the idea of doing it, but I'm not behind the idea of this time and this verbiage. How about that?
I'm ready.
Yeah, there is no verbiage we're coming up with if we are gonna do verbiage. So,
Thing that is entailed, it's kind of like the same thing of pay as you throw. Like, are we gonna go down the road passing an ordinance where we don't really know what it's gonna be, right? And you know, I don't love that idea as far as, because that's what we did with pay as you throw, and you know, and so be it. When the rest of the county ends up signing on or not, you know, if the rest of the county doesn't sign on to it, we're gonna not do it, is pretty much how I view it, right? That's my perception of that issue. And so I kind of feel the same way here. It's like, are we gonna run down this road and say, down on plastic bottles, and nobody else does? And it's like, what good is that gonna do? That's only gonna hurt our businesses and whatnot. I mean, that's what I feel like. I feel like it's just gonna put the onus on them. But your new information of you have to own 3 different locations in Colorado, and otherwise it wouldn't even pertain to you, sort of eliminates that for small business. Kind of answered my own thing there, but yeah, but go for it, Lisa, sorry.
So first of all, I think that I think it's critical that everybody do something right now, because we're already environmentally in a tremendously bad place, and all we're gonna do now is slow things down. And I think that we have to do that. And what I've always told my kids, doesn't matter what other people are doing, you do the right thing regardless. And I think that this is the right thing to do. I don't have any problem asking Safeway and Walmart and Taco Bell and all those places to make that change. I think, and you know, visitors aren't going to come here, go to Safeway and see, oh, I'm going to have to buy an aluminum can. Forget it. I'm going to drive over to City Market. That's not going to happen, right? They're still going to buy what they're going to buy here. I just think it's a really important step to take, and maybe us doing it will motivate other people to do it. And I just don't, you know, we are small, but so we'll make a small impact instead of no impact at all.
And I'm with you 100%. I think, and we are small, but look at how many people who come through here, and the impact we have is so much bigger than the 3,000 residents of Frisco. The world comes here and sees what we have as what we hold as our priorities, which are our mountains and our rivers and our water. And to not do something like this now, and I think when people, if ideally in my perfect world, we do have a ban on single-use plastic water bottles, particularly, that when people come here and see you can only get aluminum, and then realize how easy it is, they're getting the same product, and there's all of the environmental benefits to that. That's how change is made, towards Lisa's comment of, then they go home and they pressure their councils to say, if the tiny town of Frisco can do this, why can't we? And that step is huge. You go into Safeway right now, they have a 15-foot by 6-foot high display of case of single-use 12-ounce plastic water bottles. Every one of those probably ended up in the scrap. And all of that is something we're going to have to contend with as a community, because it's not the community members who are buying those. It's not you or any of us here, or probably any of us in this room. It's the guests who come here and don't have the time, the resources, the knowledge of our recycling programs and everything else, who are pitching it. And if that's a place where we can head that off at the pass for the betterment of our community and our environment and our future, this is easy because there's an alternative. We're not taking anything away from our small businesses or our big businesses. We're just saying, buy the box water, buy the aluminum water, buy the glass water, because those are all recyclable, and particularly the aluminum, which is infinitely recyclable within the state. So why would we not set that tone? And I think when you look at a place like South Lake Tahoe, who did this 2 months ago, right? Like, they're the same type of community. Like they have that lake that is their biggest resource, that is a risk because of all of these plastics. And they break down into smaller plastics and then they end up in our wells. Then we have to spend so much money to filter, to clean, to put back online. Let's just stop bringing those things into our community. And we can start with that. And I think plastic water bottle ban, skip the stuff ban would be a perfect way to start that. And I don't see the business hurt that creates, because there are alternatives. And there's even more alternatives coming online probably by the year. Every time, more communities can do this, the more incentive there is for the big bottlers to be like, we gotta catch up. And I'd love to be a part of that. That's where I
You
stand.
go ahead. I want to reiterate kind of that we are small but mighty for a lot of reasons. And besides the visitor base, the other piece is, we did our plastic bag ban and disposable bag fee not that long ago, but we were one of a handful of communities that had it in place, and now we have a statewide ban. And it's because communities like ours showed everybody else that we don't have to have it. Like, the world is not going to end when we have single-use plastic bags. So I do think we have a huge impact, and now you can see that in the resulting statewide legislation. And I think a piece that gets overlooked or laughed at a lot is this repeal of the local preemption. We literally have a political system where lobbyists have gone out and created laws that prohibit us from banning these products. We are so dependent on this falsely, because we've been taught to believe that plastic is, we're so dependent on it. We need it. We are in this disposable society and we can't live without it. And I call BS on that. And I think it's, we got one step further in repealing it. So now we can take action. And I think now it's our responsibility to take action. So I'm supportive of this. I do think there are iterations of policy where, we start with big players who has the resources that can actually implement this. If this is going to hurt small business, let's look at how we can, I don't want to provide loopholes for people, but how can we incentivize those businesses to get across the finish line and really go after the ones that have the biggest impact? Because you mentioned Safeway. I don't know what the actual statistic is here in Frisco, but I know in Breckenridge, the bottled water is the #1 highest revenue generator for that city market. #1, above everything else.
Wow.
And I have to believe that it's very similar here at Safeway. So that's just not, it's just not okay. And so that's where I'm at. I don't know in terms of specifically what we should be doing, but there's a huge wave and a huge opportunity with the Plastics Pollution Prevention Act that we have some more clout and cover to do this work. So I'm supportive of moving forward with something. What should that be, Hillary? No, I'm just
I like this idea. I guess I would just ask that we be really careful, like especially for small businesses, on how we implement that for small people. Because a lot of things aren't available yet in certain types of containers. So, you can either get orange juice in a plastic bottle or a plastic cup until somebody figures out, there's just certain things like the water. I'm all good with banning single-use water bottles. But then, like, what's the other side of that? We live at altitude. So how are we going to make sure that visitors drink enough water and our emergency rooms aren't? I mean, I'm just saying there's like a education piece to it. There's got to be like a community buy-in, I don't know, it'd be nice to have like some maybe ambassadors that work within our community to educate visitors, or I don't know what that would look like. It's just rolling out of my brain, but just some way, like, so I don't know, just to make sure that, if bottled water is the #1 seller, like what if people are cheap and they're like, oh, I'm not going to buy it, and then they don't drink water. I'm just thinking of worst case scenarios. And, if this is something that does come into our local small businesses, like I would hope that we're really careful in how this would affect people. And, you know, I think of all the restaurants and places, a lot of them, like, you know, we don't offer to go things unless people ask, or I'll be like, did you need plasticware? Do you need this? Do you need that? But, you know, I found like a company that, does like molded fiber or different types of reusable products. It's a US based company. And, you know, like, how can we get their products to all of the food distributors that our community uses? Like, is there something we can do as a town council to say, hey, Cisco, hey, Shamrock Foods, hey, Italico, we want this in our community. Can you start offering it? Because I can order it, but it's way cheaper if you go through like a distributor. So like, I guess what I'm saying is like, if we're going to go down this road, let's kind of also create, not a handbook, but like, we need to help businesses transition, I guess, to the smartest possible thing. Because I don't know what, I mean, I think people, I don't know. It would probably go better if we participated in that transition. It's one thing to create an ordinance and be like, here you go. But it's also another thing, like, you know, I can order, you know, environmental friendly plasticware from China. Is that what you guys are suggesting? You know, like, I don't want to do that because the carbon footprint is probably as bad, you know, like shipping it from China, moving it, bringing it to Frisco, however it gets here, you know? So like, I guess I would say like, we should be careful that we know, like, here's the ordinance or here's the idea, folks, and then here's the road to get there. I don't want to just put this thing out there and be like, well, you know, plastic bags, that was an easy one. You know, that was easy because you can get a cloth bag, but it's like, in order for people to transition to the right things, I don't know. What else?
How can we leverage? And we aren't big buyers from distributors, but how could we? Could we leverage our business community and help them get together to talk to the distributors, you know, because that's, I mean, that's a really, really great point. And there's only the 3 or 4 that you named that is really serving most of our restaurants. And
yeah. And I got some emails from I reached out to these companies to be like, how, you know, how do I use your products? And most of them want you to talk to your distributors to get their items in. But it's like, people can drive to Denver and go to Costco and buy all their plastic forks or whatever they want there. But I'm just trying to be really smart about it. You know, like, and I'm just gonna say it. If we're going down this road, we should not be selling plastic sleds. I'm just gonna say it, like, that's to me a single-use plastic.
100%.
It sounds like the way they're using them. I think you're right.
People can bring their own sleds, but for us to actually be selling a single-use plastic sled, I mean, I get it. It's a great amenity item, but it's hard for me it's contradictory. I can't wrap my head around it, you know, and maybe an education piece or more water filling stations and like, I don't know, create some sort of ambassador program or environmental vibe where it's not just, I don't know, because like a lot of people that come here brag about coming here. So let them take something home with them, whether it's a change of their mind, a water bottle, something that we could.
Yeah.
Plastic sleds that are made out of recycled plastic bottles.
I mean,
I fully agree. I mean, I think to me, what you said is what I feel like. The plastic bag ban was an easy step, right? Because there's plenty of alternatives. The ban on a single-use plastic water bottle is an easy step because there's alternatives. All of those other things you mentioned, I think, is what we should keep discussing and striving towards. But I'm with you. I don't want anything that's not attainable or so cost prohibitive that it gives a benefit to the big, you know, chain restaurants or anybody else. But I think it's that. How do we kind of, what you and Jesse were talking about, how do we start there and then see if we can use the collective, you know, reconvene the business group for a few meetings and see who would like to try to help and see what we can do to try to push or do bulk orders or do something where we use the collective of the community to push back on Cisco and say, hey, we're heading this way. Hopefully, how about you get ahead of it with us and be one of the only providers who does provide X type of plasticware.
Yeah.
Disposable ware. I don't know, but I'm not proposing by any means anything more drastic than I think the skip the stuff, which then it's still available. Like I would be in full favor of the, you order from, take out from anywhere and it's the do you want it? We have it if you want it, but it doesn't go with out the door every single time. Work towards finding a better solution to all of these, all the things you mentioned, but I don't think we can answer that now. I think it's something we work towards. But I would be a huge advocate of working on and pushing the single-use plastic water bottle ban. I see it as something, anything less than a gallon of water is a single-use plastic container. So that way you still have, the gallon of water, if your pipes freeze, you can still take care of your house. Something happens, you have a resource that you can still use. And it's bulk, but it's not 12 ounces, drink it, toss it, move on to the next one.
There's no other option at that level.
Yeah.
That's where it's like.
There's the refill stations, but I don't think that's a realistic expectation. So that's why I think,
Yeah.
we
So
have to draw a cutoff, but
along those lines, that's where, these alternatives cost more, right? They do, period. It's why we use them, is because they're cheap, and that's where we're at, and that's what we do. But, aluminum is much more difficult to get nowadays, much more expensive. Whatever. There are alternatives. They do cost more. One of the things we did with the bag ban is that we created the Frisco bags, which are great. And they're still around. I saw some tourists walking around, just yesterday with like.
They just came back.
They just came back.
Yeah.
So that's great, and like offering water bottles and all is also another way that you can options. But that's one of the things where like we should be looking at the infrastructure then and like how many water bottle filling stations are there in the town, right? Like where can you go? I have to go to Elizabeth's to go fill up my water on Main Street, because it's filtered water. I happen to know it's filtered water. And, and it's one of those things, it's like, I'm not going to go into the public bathroom and like fill up my water bottle in one of those disgusting sinks. Sorry. But it is, we have offered other things, for a similar thing. It's not rocket science. It's something we can figure out, but it does cost more. And it does potentially put an onus on small businesses, and small businesses definitely felt pain when we passed that. But we didn't get crazy about enforcing it against the small businesses. We definitely didn't, because I know there are still businesses out there,
It's also like a lot of the places I've worked at in the past, like, as a business owner, I don't want to hand that stuff out anyway, because I have to pay for it, so I'm like, you don't get silverware unless you ask, or I'll ask, but, like in my own business, I've looked at potentially installing a water refill station in my own business. And not even selling, because I have aluminum canned water, but just, I don't know, but what could we do for if we get to that point, like small businesses, can we, subsidize part of their water station, or just add more on Main Street, or just make them more visible or obvious thing?
Vanessa, we tried that and I don't remember where that went, or if it never, in offering grants or even installing the water bottle fill stations at any business that wanted to participate. That was where the bottle kind of program started, correct?
Bottle program's still going. Animal Pledge. Yeah, we did a good job of putting them in town facilities. We investigated putting them outside. There's some obvious issues with putting water
outside have available year round. We did offer them to businesses and we did not see a lot of success. Like some businesses were like, we already have it. Like, thanks, but no thanks. 10 Mile Music Hall would be one of those. We thought they would be particularly good because people are at concerts. We don't want them to keep getting plastic cups and getting water. I do think we could hit that harder again if we wanted to resurrect it and see if we could get some businesses to do it. I think it's absolutely worth a try. I know I do get water at Walmart and I get water at Whole Foods from a water station, filling station, just a heads up. Walmart, yeah, in the back of the store, I think. Yeah. So it's possible.
Thank you. I just couldn't, I know we'd tried that, so I think, and it might be time to come back. but-
Yeah, because I don't even remember hearing about it. So
Didn't either. I don't know if this is too costly to think about, but when you brought up the bags, right, like the info center has the water bottles to sign the pledge and stuff, but what if that was offered like the bags to different businesses so that if people came in and said, do you have bottles of water, you could say, I don't, but if you sign this pledge, here's a free one.
Yep.
Right? Maybe something, I mean, I know they take up a lot of space at people's businesses and stuff, but I don't know how expensive or,
Cost us,
right, it would cost, yeah, so I don't know.
not that we don't want
If
to
that's-
invest in this. but-
Yeah,
At
but
least-
maybe that's
I think
an alternative.
part of it, I mean, I guess there's a couple different ways we could go about it. We could be like, all right, we're just gonna ban plastic water bottles. Boom, you guys, whoever you are, figure it out. Or we could do kind of like that, I don't know what, I can't think of the right word, but like take some leadership in like leading people into a place where you're like, I don't know, like, I think about where I'm from and like, people I don't even know if they have I just don't know if they know like how easy it is or just fun or care, and I think and I don't want to say it's our job to educate people, but I think it could also be a really fun endeavor to create this environmental vibe along with an ordinance. Do you know what I mean? I don't,
Totally agree. Yeah, I think.
is it silly? Like,
No, that's a lot of where the water bottle pledge started, was that try to educate, try to get it out there.
I didn't even know about the water bottle
I mean, my
pledge.
logo's gone, but I mean, that's why we got the logo created, is like because of our water and how great it is and how lucky we are to be here. And there are people from communities who aren't as lucky as we are, where you can drink water from the tap or consistently or safely or trusted. And so there is that barrier of that's just what they know is water. But I think that's where we can also say that there's an alternative to pitching that little bottle out every single time you do it.
Yeah, and it's like you think about like how much water you actually get in those little bottles, and it's like, is it really worth it?
And they don't even drink them. The amount of times that they're, if they make it to the recycling bin, that they're halfway full of water still. You're like, you just paid for that water to fly from wherever it was bottled in a plastic thing that sat on a shelf, and then you drink 3 sips of it and threw it away. I mean, that is the problem that we're talking about. And it's insane.
Weird, even those little micro,
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Those little minis.
But Liz, sorry, just wanted to Liz's point about like, you think about people coming in and you're not sure if they can navigate that, but like water is a basic necessity. Like we don't have to provide it in disposable. People are going to figure out how to drink water, like if it's available and it is, and it's safe in our community, they're going to figure it out.
You know what else? I know that when you take the shuttle from the airport, they offer you plastic bottles. Maybe we can give them some of our bottles to hand out instead.
Well, so
And then visitors have them.
We tried to get a water bottle fill station in DIA sponsored by the town of Frisco by the shuttle pickups.
Oh, wow, wow, that's.
Don't know where it landed, but we talked about it years ago.
Wow.
But, like, I don't think Summit Express can offer you a non-sealed bottle, that is like.
But
you
they
know,
can if
that-
they get
That's
the
like a
aluminum.
liability there.
But if they get the aluminum ones, they can.
Well, yeah, if they're sealed and
Yeah,
they're aluminum,
but
like
not
when you
ours.
sell,
Yeah.
right, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, I think in this, there is also a necessary educational component towards how good our water is, because
Yep.
people are still talking about how crappy our water is because they've heard about our PFAS situation. And it's like, nobody's drinking that water. You know, I just did a tour of the water plant up north 10 Mile and all that. Nobody has better water than we do. No, period. And that's the case. And people
There's
need
the
to know
line.
that. And nobody seems to know that. And everybody's stuck on the article that came out from Sub Daily. You know, so there's another educational piece like,
Their own baggage from their own community too,
Yeah.
which to be fair, there's plenty of places that don't have access to clean water, but
sure.
100% agree with you on that. Yeah.
There are people who live here who are thinking that our water still sucks. It's like,
Yeah.
sorry.
Rick, did you have anything you wanted to chime in or thoughts?
No, I mean, you guys are hitting all the topics, right? I just, in that, I totally agree. The plastic bag thing was easy, right? The big easy button. Is there, as part of the educational component, is there this is a theme you're gonna hear, is there room, or is it a good idea to do some community outreach, like an evening at the Day Lodge again, and say, hey, this is what we're looking at, community? And just to get the word out, that sort of thing.
So, yeah, and this goes to my issue with like the surveys and things. That if we're gonna ask the community, then we have to listen to them. If they're all gonna say, no way, this is ridiculous, and then we go ahead and do it anyway. I just don't think that that's right. I think we should ask when we want to go by what is given back to us. I just think that that's what they
Option
elected.
is just not asking otherwise, you know.
We didn't
like,
see it.
that doesn't make
No,
sense.
I agree. I don't think we should have asked.
Act on strategic priorities that you've set as a council, and that's what you're either choosing between that or going out and asking the community every time we do ask the community, they can come here for a public hearing.
Right. And
But
strategic priorities came from the community.
Yes. And, you know, you have to be pointed in what you're asking and ask the right questions
Right.
and the right way. So, yeah. But I think it's important to ask the community. Even if we're gonna do this, I think it's important to ask, regardless of what direction we go in. And I hate to say that.
I
you
disagree.
think-
I know, I disagree. I
And
think we
that's
were
only
elected to
because
make
you
these
think
decisions.
that everyone's gonna say no.
No, it's not. No, I just think we should, if we're going to ask, then we have to listen. They elected us to make decisions. And if we're gonna go back to them and say, okay, I know you elected us, but we want to know what you have to say about this particular issue, then I think we have to listen to them. And I think if we're gonna make a decision and we know what the decision is without that community input, then why are we asking them?
I'm sorry, but I completely differ here
know you
because it's never 100%. If it's 100% and that's it, period, and there's nobody who has any issue, then you know what? Yeah, we should be going that way. And I would hope that we would go to the community and the community would 100% unequivocally say, get rid of single-use plastics. And then you know what? That's probably what we're gonna do. But what happens if they come back and most of them are like, yeah, it doesn't really mean much to me. That doesn't mean that we unanimously have to decide to get rid of them. I think you kind of have to represent the community that way, where there's some people who said no and some people who said yes, you know, and
I just know, I know that there's somebody that I work with who came to me and said, I'm not doing the surveys anymore. She's not doing them because they're not listened to. And I just think we either make the decision because we were elected to do that, or we go to the public and we do what they want. I don't think we can.
Are our surveys like definitive? Are they more like polls? Like, you know, I don't know.
No, I agree. I
the
agree.
poll isn't a ballot initiative. You know,
Right.
like-
It's just, it's a micro measuring stick.
Right. But that's not how the public is taking it.
Mhm.
They're
Well,
taking
then-
it as we're asking and then ignoring.
Yep.
Let's do a poll on that.
I mean, I think that if we slowly pick our way through this big idea, you know, follow what the state of Colorado is suggesting. I mean, obviously, and then
I think it's more than a suggestion. Council, that would like us to.
No, but we're gonna follow the law. And then, you know, like maybe it is doing single-use plastic water bottles, just that. And then start picking away at the other things and not doing that until we know how to do it right. Because as a small business owner, it would be really hard for me to just do it all at once and not have any help and try to run a business and balance a budget in my own business. And, you know, like I need time to plan for those costs and I need time to raise my prices because that's what's going to happen, you know, and that's okay. That's how the world is. But I need time to and any business owner would want to have time to wrap their head around it. So I don't, does that make sense?
So to keep the conversation moving forward, it sounds like there's at least support to see if Hillary and someday we'll get you a staff, I hope. That's the next step, but not pick a to maybe research what South Lake Tahoe did and who else has was there another? San Francisco is in your.
So is just municipal buildings and properties. Another town that has done a full water bottle ban is Concord, Massachusetts. But they also started with just like more internal. So you can also do it that way. You can start, you know, just all in.
And maybe look at those sleds.
There, but well, the sleds, the exception.
Maybe buy-in, and we're not walking the talk.
Yeah, we have to be doing it too, but I think. Wow, I guess. But I think we are, right? Like, I don't know that for a fact, but.
Written ordinance, there's no policy that says that we will not use or spend town money on plastic water bottles. But we do, as to our best ability, avoid them.
I mean, I think unless I'm mishearing council, let's work on coming up with a ban on single-use plastic water bottles and we'll keep the conversation going towards the next fruit on the tree, so to speak, that as we can go. I get the sled thing, but I think in the volume of waste and impact. But I'll support if we can find better sleds too. And it's amazing that you never know you're gonna be talking about when you get elected.
You go to Carter Park and you don't have to, nobody's selling sleds, but it's a community sledding hill. And you just, if you have a sled, you get one or you go borrow.
No,
one.
they're buying it all from City Market.
Yeah,
This is
City
the
Market's
town's not benefiting.
Why don't we just ban single-use sleds too?
I've just seen it sled for like 10 years. It's amazing. My question to Thad would be, do we have to wait till 2024 or can we do this faster?
I gotta look. I think it's gonna depend on exactly which. Yeah.
We didn't wait for bags.
Yeah, and the advice was that what you did wasn't supported by state law, so.
It's true. I hear recall. We broke.
You certainly did.
Yep. Yep. But I'm willing to have the courage to step forward.
That's why I asked the question. Thank you, Thad.
I'd be happy to be a year or two ahead of the law.
Yeah.
And set the tone, and I know many will try to follow us, so.
Yeah, and so then with that, once we approve a reading, it would really be great if there's already been outreach going on so people are aware. So it's not like pay as you throw, because all of a sudden, every business I know absolutely freaked out when we passed pay as you throw. What does this mean? What am I gonna have to do? My dumpster enclosure? You know, I don't know. We don't know.
I still don't know.
And you know, so that's one of those things, and like, you know, we gotta be.
But this one's pretty obvious at this point. Source a different single-use plastic water, or source a different plastic water bottle.
And the restaurants and everybody were definitely concerned and all, but I think what we did with the Frisco bag was crucial there. You know, we subsidized them before they had to start spending more on the bags that they hand out for free, right? That's how that. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I buy a lot of paper bags, like shopping bags. And it's nice, like I just got my new shipment of the Frisco bags and it really does help out. Like, I'm like, sure, I can save some money this month. you know, so. Yep. And people love them.
Yeah, they're great. They're people love them. It's a good tote bag and it's got great graphics. And
Love the changed graphics, by the way.
Oh, there's new graphics?
More diversity, right? More diversity.
Let's go shopping. Are there any other questions you have for us at this time on?
No, if
See
you
what-
just want to stick with bottles.
We'll start there.
I just,
Erin left the meeting too soon. She doesn't know what's coming.
I mean, like, how many, never mind, I'm just wondering, like, how many water bottles are in one sled?
It's a great question.
You know what? I'm curious, like, you go to the beach and you know, rent a place, they usually have like beach chairs and an umbrella for you, like. Why are the sleds not in the short-term rental? It's like, with your license, thou shalt have a sled. Like, that should be.
that's
like
the
a
truth. Actually, there have been many Airbnbs.
Water bottles, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
We add that to the recycling center, like, you know, like the sled bin, where if you're, I mean, because the thing is people come to visit, they run to the Walmart, they buy a sled, or they go to the, you know, and then they're leaving in a week, so then
They
they.
don't visit the recycling
Right.
center.
I just need a sled drop off.
My house gave me the metal radio
Flood drop off. It's the bottom of the hill.
It's the graveyard.
No, there's so many sleds, like Grace will just go up there for fun and be like, six
Drive this
sleds to
sled.
choose from, you know, they just leave them there.
Anything?
Yes, so it's only single-use plastics. It's not styrofoam at this point, or is it?
Styrofoam's happening without us.
That is happening in 2024. However, I'm not sure how many of our restaurants will actually apply to. So that is another question. If we want to expand that,
Kind of a
we have the option.
issue.
I can't think of a single one that would apply to if the three locations.
Taco Bell, Wendy's.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're not,
They aren't using.
they don't, a lot of them don't serve styrofoam.
Oh, yeah, but if they did, and it would be that sort of restaurant, I don't know if it would apply to the Safeway Deli or Whole Foods Deli.
I assume so.
Would think so.
Styrofoam there.
Yeah, I haven't seen, I mean, I don't think I've seen styrofoam. I think of one place I can get a styrofoam cup. And that comes in a 32-ounce margarita to go from a phenomenal local Mexican restaurant. Be okay with it.
After tonight, it might be a thing forever.
And read through the ordinance again and just make sure that this exception is not just for plastic bags, it's for styrofoam, and then I can bring that back next time. Yeah, okay. And just bottles, not skip the stuff, correct?
I'd be okay with sticking stuff. If it doesn't, I don't think there's a.
Definitely skip that. That's only gonna help businesses.
Yeah, it's cheaper for a business.
Yeah, it saves them money.
Yep.
Thank you.
On that is how do you enforce it, but.
All right, moving forward. Thank you.
Sorry, I just said that with authority as if I were the mayor.
Yeah, skip the
Next item is.
You gotta ask.
We are adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. 8 o'clock.